My name is Captain Elias Voronin, former Spetsnaz, now just another soldier for hire. I've stood in deserts where the sand peeled skin off men like a razor, and I've moved through jungles where even the trees seemed like they wanted you dead. But nothing, ever made me feel the way Kamchatka does. It's alive, not in the way of bird song or fox tracks in snow. No, this land breathes from the belly of the earth. Steam hisses from cracks in black rock. The ground trembles under your boots, soft 1 second and iron hard the next. The air smells of sulfur, rotten eggs cooked on the wind, burning your throat if you take too deep a breath. The sky here is low, gray, always pressing down. That first morning, I woke to the sound of the valley groaning. Not thunder, not rockfall, something deeper, like the earth shifting bones under us. I lay in my tent with my rifle across my chest, staring at the nylon ceiling, thinking, this is no place for men. I was supposed to have a partner. His name was Jeffries, ex-Marine, sharp guy, but 2 nights ago he went out to take a piss and didn't come back. No struggle, no tracks, no noise. Just gone. The scientists whispered about fumarole collapses and hidden fissures. I've seen men fall into volcanic vents before. Horrible deaths, yes, but they always scream. Jeffries made no sound. That silence is what gets me. The survey team doesn't talk to me much anymore. They huddle over their instruments, whispering to each other in Russian and broken English. I see the fear in their eyes when the ground shivers, when the steam plumes shift direction as though some unseen breath stirs them. They glance at me like I'm supposed to be their wall against the impossible. But I've lived long enough to know walls break. On the 3rd day, I started hearing things. It was just after sundown when the fog thickens and the trees blur into black silhouettes. I was patrolling the perimeter, moving past a cluster of rocks stained yellow with sulfur. That's when I heard Jeffrey's voice. Elias. A whisper carried on the fog. I froze, my heart slamming once hard. My rifle came up before I could think. Elias, over here. The voice was thin, wrong, like a recording played back through water. I knew the direction. It was coming from the tree line near the fumaroles. I kept my rifle leveled, my training screaming against the instinct to follow. But something in me moved anyway. I took 3 steps forward. Then the ground shifted under my boot, a faint tremor rippling through the rock. The steam from the fumarole hissed louder, like something exhaling in irritation. That's when I knew. Whatever was calling me wasn't Jeffries. I backed away slowly, rifle steady, ears straining. The fog swallowed the trees, but I swear I saw movement between them. Something tall, not quite shaped like a man. That night, I didn't sleep. By the 4th morning, the scientists wanted to push deeper into the valley. They said the geothermal readings were anomalous, hotter and more active than they should be. One of them, Professor Koval, muttered about caverns beneath us, magma tunnels stretching for miles. I thought about Jeffries, about that whisper. I wanted to tell them no, we pull back, but I've learned not to argue with people who believe their work matters more than their lives. So I followed, rifle ready, every sense sharpened to a blade. The valley narrowed into a gorge. Steam clung to the walls, making the rocks sweat. The air grew thick, almost metallic. I could taste iron on my tongue. That's when the animals vanished. The day before, I'd heard ravens croaking overhead, seen fox tracks in the snowmelt, but here there was nothing. No sound of wings, no distant howls. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I stopped the group. Listen. They all froze. Koval frowned. What is it? No birds. No animals. Nothing. One of the younger scientists, a girl barely in her 20s, shifted nervously. Predators do that. Wolves, maybe a bear. I shook my head. No, predators don't silence the earth. Then the ground trembled. Not a quake, not a collapse, just a pulse. A slow, deliberate thud underfoot, as though something massive moved far below. The scientists argued about seismic activity. I stayed quiet, but inside my gut twisted. That wasn't geology, that was footsteps. By late afternoon, the gorge widened into a basin where boiling mud pits bubbled and spat. The smell was unbearable, sulfur and rot. My eyes watered. That's when it happened. A voice again. Jeffries. Clearer this time. Elias, help me. It came from the mud pits, from the steam itself. My hands went slick on the rifle grip. The scientists froze, looking at me with wide eyes. They heard it too. One of them whispered, "That's impossible." The steam shifted. For a heartbeat, I saw a shape rising inside it. Long, jointed limbs, skin that gleamed wet like stone, a head too narrow, too tall. Then it sank back into vapor, leaving only the hiss of boiling mud. The youngest scientist screamed. I didn't blame her, because in that moment I realized something that made my blood turn to ice. Whatever this thing was, it didn't just stalk us. It knew us. It studied us. And it wanted us to hear. I've fought men with rifles, knives, explosives. I've fought enemies who wanted me dead as badly as I wanted them dead. But this wasn't a battle. It was a game I didn't know the rules to, and I was already losing. We stood frozen around the bubbling mud pits, steam curling between us when Jeffrey's voice slipped through again. "Elias, come down. I'm here." It was coming from beneath the mud, as if he were buried alive under boiling earth. My body reacted before my mind did. I stepped forward. The heat scalded my face, but for an instant I believed. My partner might still be alive. Then the ground shifted, a faint swell beneath the crust, and the rational part of me snapped awake. No man could survive down there. That voice wasn't Jeffrey's, it was bait. I raised my rifle, scanning the mist. Back to camp, now. Professor Koval shook his head, stubborn even as fear bled through his face. "No, Captain, this is extraordinary. The resonance." I cut him off. That wasn't resonance. That was something playing with us. The youngest scientist, her name was Anya, clutched her pack straps so tight her knuckles whitened. I heard him too." "You heard something," I said. "Not him." The silence after that was worse than the voice, just the hiss of mud and the faint sigh of wind. The others shifted uneasily, but no one argued further. We started moving back toward the gorge, slower than we should have, everyone stealing glances at the fog behind us. That night, the camp turned into a cage of nerves. The others set up their tents in a tight circle near a rock outcrop. I took the first watch, crouched with my rifle across my knees, eyes fixed on the mist rolling through the valley. The steam seemed alive. It twisted in shapes that looked like faces if you stared long enough. Jeffrey's jawline, my father's scowl, the hard eyes of men I'd killed. I knew it was tricks of light, but my gut told me otherwise. Hours passed. The night grew colder, steam frosting into crystals on my gloves. That's when I heard movement. Not a voice this time. A scrape, deliberate, like something dragging across stone. I swung the rifle toward the sound. A shadow shifted just beyond the firelight, tall, thin, moving with a strange, unnatural rhythm. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Identify yourself," I barked in Russian, then English. The shadow froze. Then it leaned forward just enough for the light to catch it. For an instant, I saw it clearly. A body too long in the limbs, skin gray and slick like wet basalt, head tilted at an angle no neck should allow. Eyes, if you could call them that, shone like dull embers. It stepped back into the fog and was gone. My mouth went dry. I wanted to shoot, but every instinct screamed not to waste a bullet. Bullets mean nothing if you don't know what you're aiming at. I didn't tell the others what I saw. Not yet. They were already cracking, and I needed them to function long enough to get us out. By dawn, we were all shadows of ourselves. The scientists barely spoke, avoiding each other's eyes. When the ground trembled again, just one slow pulse, Anya burst into tears. I made the decision. We're pulling out. Koval's face flushed red, anger mixing with fear. "You don't command this mission." "I command whether you live or die," I said flatly. "Pack your gear. We're leaving the valley before it buries us." But fate didn't give us the chance. We were less than an hour from camp when the fog thickened into a wall. Visibility dropped to a few meters. The air grew hot, suffocating, carrying that metallic tang stronger than ever. "Stay close," I ordered. My voice felt too loud in that choking silence. Then the voices began, not just Jeffrey's, all of them. Mothers, lovers, children, each one calling to the scientists in tones they couldn't ignore. Anya stopped dead, her eyes wide and glassy. "My brother," she whispered. "He's here." I grabbed her arm. "No, he isn't." She struggled, shrieking, clawing to break free. The others shouted too. Someone heard a father, another swore he heard his wife. The fog was filled with pleas and sobs, voices overlapping until it was a chorus of grief. Then something moved through the steam. At first, I thought it was Anya breaking loose, but the shape was wrong. Too tall, limbs bending backward, moving faster than a man should. It slipped between us, a gray blur. One of the older scientists screamed, cut off in an instant. When the fog cleared, he was gone. We fired then. I don't remember who shot first. Maybe me, maybe someone else, but gunfire cracked through the mist. The steam lit with muzzle flashes, but the thing didn't fall, it didn't even bleed. The ground shuddered beneath us, throwing 2 men to their knees. The fog roared like a furnace exhaling. Then silence. Only 4 of us remained. We stumbled back to camp in ruins. The fire pits were cold, the tents half collapsed, and the fog pressed tight around the clearing like walls. Koval sat hard on a rock, his hands trembling. "It knew our names," he muttered. "It knew us." I didn't answer, because he was right. The way it whispered Jeffries, the way it lured Anya. This wasn't an animal. It was something older, something that had been listening to the valley for centuries, maybe longer. And it wanted us here. That night, no one slept. We huddled together near the last working lantern. The fog never broke, and the ground throbbed every few minutes like a heartbeat. Sometime around midnight, Koval leaned close to me. His voice was ragged. "Captain, what if it's not outside round?" "What do you mean?" He swallowed. "What if it's beneath us, in the earth itself?" The ground trembled again, answering him, and I knew then he was right. This thing didn't move through the valley. The valley was part of it. Near dawn, I made a choice. We couldn't wait. Every hour we stayed, it learned more about us. "We move at first light," I said, "no matter what." But even as I said it, a thought coiled through me, cold and merciless. How do you run from the ground itself? At dawn, the fog hadn't lifted. It never did anymore. It clung to us like wet cloth, filling our lungs, pressing against our eyes until even the nearest shapes blurred. I couldn't tell if the sun had risen at all, only that the darkness had thinned from black to gray. "We move now," I said. My voice sounded dead, stripped of all the command it once carried. There were 4 of us left, myself, Professor Koval, Anya, and a gaunt man named Sergei who barely spoke. Their faces were hollow, skin drawn tight from fear and lack of sleep. I had seen men in combat zones look like this, the kind of look that says they'll follow orders not because they believe in them, but because they don't know what else to do. We left the basin behind, packs strapped, rifles ready, boots crunching against damp volcanic gravel. Every step was a war against the silence. The gorge was worse than I remembered. Steep walls of black stone rose around us, slick with condensation. The fog pooled between them like a living thing, thick enough to make you choke if you breathed too deep. The ground trembled at intervals, faint but deliberate, like the beat of some buried drum. Anya whispered, "It's following us." "No," I muttered, scanning the mist. "It's surrounding us." Halfway through the gorge, the voices came again. This time, they didn't even try to sound human. They bent and warped, half animal, half machine, screeching and howling in tones that scraped the inside of my skull. At first they came from behind us, then ahead, then from the gorge walls themselves. The sound reverberated through the stone, making the cliffs groan. Sergei panicked. He broke from the line, sprinting forward into the mist. "Stop!" I barked. My voice bounced uselessly off the rocks. Sergei vanished in seconds. We ran after him, but the fog was thick, sound warped. His footfalls echoed in the wrong direction. Then came a scream. High, raw, cut off in a single wet choke. When we reached the spot, all that remained was his rifle. The barrel was bent nearly in half. Anya collapsed to her knees. God, we're all gonna die here." I hauled her up by the shoulder straps. "Not if we keep moving." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. The gorge narrowed further, walls closing in until we were walking single file. That's when I saw it again. A shape in the fog ahead, tall, angular, its limbs wrong. It stood still, waiting. "Koval," I said quietly, "light." He fumbled with the flare, his hands trembling so badly I thought he'd drop it. But finally, he struck it. Red fire bloomed, cutting through the mist. And there it was. Not a hallucination, not a trick of steam. It was flesh, or something like it. The creature's skin shimmered like wet obsidian, stretching tight over a frame far too long, too thin. Its arms nearly brushed the ground. The head was narrow, tapering into a face with no features, no eyes, no mouth. But when the flare light struck it, I felt it watching, not with sight, but with something deeper, invasive, like it crawled into my skull through thought alone. Then it moved. One step, a shift of air. The fog surged forward, swallowing the red glow. The flare guttered, then went out. Darkness again. Run, I ordered. We sprinted through the gorge, boots slipping on wet rock, breath tearing at our throats. Behind us came the sound of stone splitting, earth tearing, as though the gorge itself was breaking open. We didn't stop until the path widened into a flat stretch of ground. We collapsed, gasping, our lungs burning. Koval's voice cracked. What is it? A spirit? An animal? A demon? I don't know, I said honestly, but it's not finished with us. The ground beneath us pulsed, once, twice, like a slow heartbeat, and then we heard it. Not voices this time, not words. A sound like laughter, low, grinding, vibrating through the stone. Anya clutched my sleeve, her eyes wild. It knows we can't leave. It's toying with us. I couldn't argue, because she was right. We had one last hope, an old supply cache left by a Soviet geological team decades ago, marked on Koval's map. If we could reach it, there might be a radio, maybe even flares strong enough to cut through the fog. It lay deeper in the gorge. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but there was nothing behind us anymore, just steam and teeth waiting in the dark. So we pushed on. The path narrowed again, leading to a cavernous opening in the cliff face. The air pouring out of it was hotter, damp, tinged with the stink of iron and blood. My stomach turned. "This is it," Koval whispered. "The cache should be inside." I raised my rifle. "Stay close. If you see anything move, don't hesitate." We stepped into the cavern. The air was stifling. Every breath tasted like rust. The walls dripped with moisture, red-stained streaks that looked far too much like blood. And there, against the far wall, half buried in rockfall, was a rusted steel container stamped with faded Cyrillic. Koval staggered toward it, hope burning in his eyes. He clawed at the latches, coughing in the heat. "Help me, please." I moved to cover him, scanning the darkness. Anya hung back, her face pale. That's when the sound came again. Laughter, deeper this time, echoing from the cavern walls until it was impossible to tell where it came from. The ground shuddered, harder now. Dust fell from the ceiling, and from the cracks in the walls, steam hissed outward, steam that shaped itself into forms. Faces, dozens of them. Jeffries, Sergei, men and women I didn't recognize. Their mouths opened wide in silent screams fading in and out of the vapor. Anya whimpered. "It's showing us what it's taken." I gripped my rifle tighter. My skin crawled with the weight of unseen eyes. Then the floor split. The cavern shook violently, rock splitting in a jagged line down the center. Heat blasted upward, and from the darkness below rose the sound of something enormous shifting, breathing. The cache tipped, sliding toward the crack. Koval screamed, diving after it. I caught his pack strap, yanking him back just as the steel container vanished into the fissure. The sound of metal crashing against stone echoed deep, then was swallowed by silence. Koval sobbed. No, it was our only chance. The laughter returned, so loud it rattled my teeth. And from the crack, a hand rose. Not human. Too long, fingers jointed twice, skin shining black with heat. It gripped the edge of the fissure, pulling something vast up from below. For the first time in years, I felt true terror. Not fear of dying, but fear of what comes after. Because whatever was climbing out of that pit wasn't meant for this world. I turned to the others, my voice breaking with urgency. "Run, now!" But as they stumbled toward the cavern mouth, I realized something horrible. The fog was already there, thick, writhing, blocking the way out. We were trapped. The cavern shook like the belly of a waking beast. Pebbles rained from the ceiling. The fissure glowed faint red, as though the earth itself was bleeding fire. That hand, too long, too jointed, slick like molten rock cooling, dragged itself higher. Then came another, gripping the stone with claws that shrieked against the rock. Anya screamed. Koval fell back against the wall, eyes wide, lips moving silently like he was praying. I should have frozen too, but training doesn't leave you, not even in hell. My rifle snapped to my shoulder. Breath steady, finger firm on the trigger. I fired, the cavern lit with muzzle flashes. Bullets sparked against the thing's skin, some embedding, others ricocheting like I'd shot steel. The recoil jarred my arms, the gun's bark deafening in the enclosed space. The creature didn't flinch. Instead, it turned its featureless head toward me. The sound that followed wasn't a roar, wasn't anything I'd ever heard before. It was thought, raw, invasive, crawling into my skull like cold needles. You are nothing. My knees almost buckled. I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Fight it. Don't let it in. Move, I shouted at the others. My voice sounded far away like I was underwater. The fissure widened. Heat poured out, blistering, carrying with it a stench of sulfur and rot. The creature rose higher, its torso massive, ribbed like stone columns, skin shifting between solid and vapor. It wasn't just climbing. It was forming, pulling itself out of the earth as if the cavern were a womb. Koval scrambled toward the far side, but the ground split beneath him. Steam roared upward and a face formed in it. Jeffries again, screaming silently. Koval staggered back, clutching his head. "It knows me," he gasped. "It knows me." I grabbed his arm, hauling him upright, then stopped giving it what it wants. But Anya wasn't moving. She stood frozen near the cavern mouth, staring into the fog wall that blocked our escape. Her lips moved, whispering. I strained to hear. "Mama, Mama." "No," I snapped. "That's not her." She didn't listen. She stepped toward the fog. I lunged, tackling her before she could vanish. She fought me, sobbing, her nails raking my arms. For a second, her face wasn't her own. It was shifting, rippling like steam, her eyes hollow pits. Then she blinked, gasping, and she was Anya again. She collapsed against me, shaking. It was inside me. I saw her face. She told me to stay. I dragged her back toward the wall, keeping one eye on the fissure. The creature was almost free now, its body filling the cavern, limbs folding and unfolding like a spider testing its legs. We couldn't stay here. My soldier's mind worked on instinct. Assess, improvise, survive. We had 3 options. 1, stay and die. 2, run into the fog and pray it didn't tear us apart. 3, use the cavern itself. I chose the 3rd. "Koval," I barked. "Those explosives, didn't your team bring seismic charges?" He stared at me blankly, then blinked, understanding dawning. Yes, in my pack." "Get them, now." He fumbled with his bag, pulling out 2 canister-sized charges used for mapping underground vibrations, small, but packed with enough kick to destabilize loose rock. I grabbed them. "We're collapsing the cavern." Anya's eyes widened. "You'll bury us alive." "Better buried than devoured," I said, and I meant it. The ground shook harder now. The creature's head was nearly level with the cavern's ceiling. It had no mouth, no eyes, but its presence pressed against us like gravity, crushing thought and will. Voices filled the air, hundreds, overlapping, screaming, pleading, laughing. My skull rang with them. I forced my hands to move, planting the charges at the fissure edges, wiring the timers. My fingers felt clumsy, like someone else's hands were guiding them, but muscle memory won out. Koval hovered beside me, whispering numbers, making sure I set them right. His voice was the only tether keeping me grounded. I slammed the last timer shut. 2 minutes. We turned to run. The fog wall still blocked the entrance. It pulsed, thick and alive, and I knew the creature was holding it there, keeping us penned. I leveled my rifle at the fog, unloading the last of my magazine. Bullets tore through steam, useless, but I didn't stop. The heat, the stench, the voices, anything to break the hold. Then for just a second, the wall thinned. "Go!" I shoved Koval and Anya forward. They stumbled through the gap, disappearing into gray. I turned back once, just once. The creature's head had tilted toward me, its body halfway into this world, vast and impossible. It didn't chase, it didn't need to. Instead, its thought slammed into me like a hammer. You cannot bury me. You are already inside me. My vision blackened at the edges. My skull throbbed like it would split. I bit my tongue until I gagged on blood, forcing myself to run. We made it 10 meters out before the cavern exploded. The charges blew with a thunderous roar, the shockwave hurling us onto the wet gravel. A wall of dust and steam blasted outward, filling the gorge. Rocks collapsed, sealing the fissure, crushing the cavern's mouth. For a moment, silence. Just the hiss of settling steam, the crackle of cooling stone. Then the laughter came again, muffled, distant, but still there, rising from beneath the rock. It hadn't died. We stumbled onward, broken, half-blind from smoke and fog. Anya clung to my arm, sobbing quietly. Koval limped, muttering in Russian, words I couldn't make out. I didn't look back, because I knew what I would see. Not safety, just fog. Endless, waiting fog. And the promise that one day, no matter how far I ran, I'd hear Jeffrey's voice again. We moved through the gorge like ghosts, silent but for our ragged breathing. Every muscle in my body screamed from the blast, but pain was a blessing. It meant I was still alive. The cavern behind us was gone, sealed in rubble and steam. Yet I could still feel it breathing below, waiting. The fog hadn't thinned. If anything, it grew heavier, curling through the gorge in tendrils that felt deliberate, like fingers brushing against our skin. My rifle was empty, but I carried it anyway. A soldier without a weapon isn't a soldier. It's a corpse waiting for the ground. Anya clung to me like a child, her fingernails digging into my sleeve. Her face was gray, lips cracked, eyes bloodshot from smoke and terror. Koval stumbled ahead, muttering equations, fragments of prayers, maybe both. His sanity was slipping piece by piece. I knew the look. I'd seen it in Afghanistan, Chechnya, men who had stared too long into a darkness they couldn't fight. Most of them never came back whole. Hours blurred. Time meant nothing in the fog. The gorge twisted, walls looming higher, slick with moisture. The ground trembled in pulses, sometimes faint, sometimes strong enough to knock us off balance. Each throb felt closer, more deliberate, like the creature's heartbeat syncing with our own. Then came the voices. At first faint, drifting on the fog like echoes. Then louder, clearer. I heard Jeffrey's again. Elias, I'm here. Don't leave me behind. Koval stiffened. His voice cracked. He's calling me. Anya shook her head violently, whispering, No, it's lies. It's all lies. I gritted my teeth, forcing the words out through clenched jaw. It's not them. It never was. But even as I said it, the voice pressed closer, smoother, more convincing. The inflections were right. The way Jeffries used to draw out my name in the field, that half-joking tone he used when he needed a cigarette. My chest tightened. It knew every detail, every weakness. Koval broke first. He dropped his pack, stumbling into the fog. Misha! He cried, arms outstretched. Misha, I'm coming. Stop! I shouted, lunging after him. My hands grasped only mist, his outline blurred, swallowed in gray. There was a sound, wet, crunching, like stone grinding against bone. A single cut-off scream. Then silence. Anya collapsed, sobbing into her hands. We're all going to die here. I hauled her up. Not if you keep moving. Not if you listen to me. She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw the spark of survival, the words. But behind it was the same hollow terror that had claimed Koval. The fog didn't just kill bodies, it hollowed souls until there was nothing left but fear to feed on. We pressed forward, just the two of us now. My senses sharpened into knives. Every sound mattered. Every flicker in the fog could be death. Then the ground beneath us shifted, not in a tremor this time, but in rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2. Footsteps. Not mine. They echoed ahead, steady, heavy, like boots on stone. I froze. Pulling Anya against the gorge wall, rifle raised though useless. A figure emerged from the fog. My heart stuttered. It was me. Same build, same rifle, same scar down the jaw. The figure moved with my stride, my posture, my breathing. Anya gasped, "Oh my God!" The doppelganger raised its weapon, my weapon, and aimed at us. I didn't think. I grabbed Anya, dragging her down as I dove to the side. A shot rang out, deafening in the gorge. Stones splintered where we'd stood. I hit the ground hard, rolling to my knees. My rifle was empty, but I raised it anyway, staring at myself. The double tilted its head exactly the way I did when assessing a threat. Then it smiled. I don't smile like that. Before I could move, it dissolved into fog, shredding into wisps that slid away on unseen currents. Anya was shaking uncontrollably. It's learning. It knows you. I know, I whispered. My voice cracked, something I hadn't allowed in years. And that makes it dangerous. By nightfall, if it was night at all, we found a ledge jutting from the gorge wall. High ground, at least a defensible position. I forced Anya to eat a ration bar, though she gagged on every bite. I stayed awake, listening. The fog moved in patterns, swirling and parting, never random. Sometimes it shaped into faces, sometimes into hands, always watching. Then came the sound of footsteps again, but this time more of them. Dozens. Voices rose, overlapping. Jeffries, Koval, Sergei, my own father barking in Russian, even comrades long dead. They marched together, unseen in the fog surrounding us. Anya clutched my arm. Captain, they're coming. No, I said, though the words rang hollow. It wants us to think that. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. Then, without warning, the fog parted just enough to reveal a shape below the ledge. Anya gasped, hand flying to her mouth. It's my brother. I looked. A young man stood there, pale, trembling, his clothes torn. He looked real, solid, not vapor. He lifted his face, and for a heartbeat, I almost believed. His eyes were wet with tears. Anya, help me. She surged forward. I caught her, pulling her back. That's not him, I hissed. Yes, it is. He's alive. She fought me with sudden wild strength, screaming in my ear. The figure below reached up, arms stretching unnaturally long, fingers jointing twice. My stomach turned cold. It wasn't her brother. It never was. Anya tore free from my grip. Before I could stop her, she leapt down the ledge, straight into its arms. Her scream ripped through the gorge, echoing once, twice, then cutting short. The fog swallowed them both. And then there was one. Just me. The silence that followed was worse than the voices. I crouched on the ledge, back to the wall, empty rifle across my knees. My heartbeat thundered, echoing the slow tremor of the ground. I'd lost everyone. Scientists, soldiers, innocents, it didn't matter. The fog took them all, and now it wanted me. I stared into the mist, my voice a rasp. Come on, then. I'm not afraid of you. But it wasn't true, because in the back of my mind I already heard it whispering. Not in Jeffrey's voice, not in Anya's, in mine. Elias, lay down your weapon. Rest. You've fought enough. The voice was perfect, calm, convincing, and I knew with a sick certainty that if I ever believed it, if I ever answered myself, there'd be no coming back. The gorge stretched on without end, a hollow vein through the mountain, filled with fog that breathed like a living thing. I moved because stopping meant death, or worse, surrender. My boots slipped on the wet stone, every step loud as a gunshot in the silence. My body was breaking. My ribs ached where the blast had thrown me. My throat was raw from smoke. The ration bar turned in my stomach like lead. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the voice. It hadn't stopped since Anya disappeared. My voice, layered with tones I'd never let the world hear, gentle, coaxing, almost merciful. Elias, you've done enough. Lay down your weapon. Rest. It came from every direction, vibrating through stone and fog, burrowing into my skull until I couldn't tell if I was hearing it or thinking it. I gripped the empty rifle tighter. It was my anchor. As long as I had the weight of it in my hands, I was still me. I don't know how long I walked. Time was gone. The fog erased it. At some point, the gorge widened into a basin, a hollow bowl of jagged rock filled to the brim with swirling mist. The ground trembled with every breath of the thing below. I knew this was the heart, the center of the infection. The fog shifted, forming vague shapes that moved along the basin walls. Soldiers with rifles, scientists in parkas, Anya, Koval, Jeffries, all watching me with hollow eyes. I shouted, my voice hoarse and breaking, "You're not real, you're not them." The shapes smiled in unison, and then as one, they opened their mouths. My voice came out. Elias, Elias, Elias. The sound rattled my skull, pounding like artillery fire. I dropped to my knees, hands clamped over my ears, but it didn't stop. Lay down your weapon. You're tired. You've fought enough. My chest heaved. Part of me, an exhausted, broken part, wanted to obey. to lie down and vanish, to let the fog take me where the others had gone. But the soldier in me still clung to life. "No," I rasped. "Not like this." The fog thickened in the basin's center, rising higher, condensing. It twisted into a column, then spread into a shape: arms, legs, a head, and finally a face. My face. It stood across from me, solid this time, no longer wisps. Its eyes burned pale, its grin stretched too wide. But it was me, down to the scar, the posture, even the way I shifted my weight on my bad knee. It raised a rifle. My rifle. Loaded. I raised mine. Empty. For a long heartbeat, we stared at each other across the fog. My breath came ragged, his perfectly steady. Then it spoke, in my voice. "You know how this ends." I forced my throat to work. "Yeah." "One of us walks out." It laughed. The sound was jagged, wrong. "You still don't understand. There's no walking out. There's only me." And then it fired. The crack shattered the basin. Stone chips exploded near my head. I dove sideways, rolling behind a jagged outcrop. My chest burned, ears ringing. I counted seconds, breath heaving. My mind ran through the drill: flank, draw fire, close distance. The instincts drilled into me by years of combat. But this wasn't combat. This was suicide. I had no ammo, no grenades, nothing. The only weapon I had left was myself. I waited until it fired again, the shot whistling past. Then I moved, sprinting low, weaving through fog and stone. My double tracked me, calm, patient. A shot clipped my shoulder. Pain exploded down my arm. I gritted my teeth, pushing forward. The ledge ahead rose like salvation. I leapt. We collided. The impact drove the breath from my lungs. I slammed into the ground, my double's weight crushing me. Its face hovered inches from mine, my own eyes staring down, empty of soul. It pressed the rifle to my chest. "Stop fighting," it whispered. My whisper. My hands clawed at the weapon, my muscles screaming. The cold barrel dug into my sternum. "You're tired," it murmured. "Let go. Let me carry it now." For a flicker of a moment, I wanted to. The idea of release was sweet, seductive. But then, through the ringing in my skull, I remembered Anya's face. Koval's. Jeffrey's. I remembered the promise I made to myself back when I first put on the uniform. No man left behind. If I gave up now, their deaths meant nothing. With the last of my strength, I twisted, shoving the rifle barrel aside. The weapon discharged, the blast ripping into stone. The recoil knocked the double off balance. I surged up, teeth bared, and drove my knife into its throat. The blade sank deep. The double convulsed, eyes wide. Then it smiled. My smile, but crueler. Black fog poured from the wound, hissing like steam. It dissolved in my arms, body breaking apart into tendrils of mist that coiled upward, merging back into the basin fog. I staggered back, gasping, knife slick in my hand. The basin trembled. The fog shrieked, a sound like every voice I'd ever known screaming at once. The ground split, cracks racing through the rock. For a moment, I thought the mountain would collapse and bury me. Then, as suddenly as it had risen, the fog began to thin. It peeled away, sucked back into the cracks below. The air cleared, revealing stone walls, jagged and bare. The silence that followed was worse than the shriek. I was alone, truly alone. At dawn, I climbed from the basin. My body was broken, my mind shredded, but my legs carried me one step at a time. Hours later, I saw light through the gorge. Real light. Sunlight. When I stumbled out of the mountain pass, the world was green again. Pine forest spread below, the sky vast and blue. I collapsed to my knees, sucking in clean air. Tears burned my eyes, though I hadn't cried in years. I had survived. But survival wasn't victory. Because as I sat there staring at the tree line, I heard it again. Faint, whispering, my own voice. "Elias, you'll never leave me. I'm part of you now." And I knew with a hollow certainty that the fog hadn't died in the mountain. It had followed me out. My name is Captain Elias Navarro. For most of my life, people called me the one who comes back. I survived missions in Syria where half my team didn't. I walked away from training accidents that buried me in under avalanches. Maybe I was just luckier. Maybe I was more stubborn. Either way, survival was stitched into my bones like scar tissue. That's probably why I was the one they called for this job. I'd been flown into northern Alaska on a supply plane. dropped at a frozen landing strip with nothing but the skeletal remains of an old snowcat to ferry me across the tundra. My orders were simple: evaluate an abandoned Cold War research station, Station Kirova, before a team of climatologists moved in. Make sure it was structurally sound, check for gas leaks, power up what I could, and confirm there were no squatters or wildlife infestations. Easy money, they said. But nothing in the north is easy. The snowcat groaned like an old warhorse as I drove it across a frozen plateau, headlights slicing through curtains of blowing snow. The world was white and endless, as though I were moving across a sheet of paper where God hadn't bothered to draw anything else. My breath fogged inside my mask, freezing against the fur lining. Even through thick gloves, my fingers ached from the cold seeping into the steering wheel. The sky was bruised purple, and twilight would fall in less than an hour. Up here, night wasn't a curtain. It was a wall that slammed down without mercy. By the time the first silhouette of Station Kirova rose from the drifts, I felt relief in my chest like a fire catching in damp wood. The station was a hulk of steel and concrete, half buried. Its communication tower snapped and leaning like a broken bone. Wind screamed across its empty corridors, making the loose sheet metal flap like wings. I parked the snowcat, slung my pack, and trudged toward the entrance. My boots crunched over ice crust, each step sinking just enough to remind me of how fragile footing can be here. The air carried that metallic tang of frozen rust and old oil. The heavy steel door at the airlock resisted me, frozen by decades of storms, but with effort, I forced it open. The station sighed as though I'd woken it. A gust of stale, chemical-tinged air washed over me. Inside was darkness, layered on darkness, corridors ribbed with frost, walls where paint had blistered off in the cold. I flicked on my headlamp, and the beam found shards of glass on the floor, old Soviet warning signs half buried in ice. I told myself this was routine. Isolate the hazards, clear the entryway, secure a sleeping space, establish warmth. I'd done this 100 times in worse places. But something was already wrong. It wasn't just the silence. It was the way the silence seemed to lean toward me. I set down my pack in what must have been the control room, its cracked consoles still faintly smelling of burned circuitry. I lit a camping lantern. Its warm glow pushed back some of the dark, but the corners still seemed too deep, as though shadows had thickness here. I made a mental checklist. Fuel reserves, check. Main power, try later. Safe room, needs ceiling. That's when I heard it, a voice. It was faint at first, a murmur threaded through the moan of the wind outside. I froze, holding my breath, listening. It came again, like someone calling from down the corridor. Hola. I nearly dropped my lantern. That wasn't possible. It was my native tongue, Spanish. No one should be here. No one should even know I'd arrived yet. I stepped to the doorway, headlamp beam cutting down the frost-rimed hall. Nothing, just an endless tunnel of gray and shadow. Hello? I called out in English, my voice rough in the stillness. No answer, only the wind hammering the structure from outside. I told myself it had been an auditory trick. Up here, the wind could scream like a woman, groan like a man dying, even whisper like a prayer. I'd read about it before. Polar acoustics could twist into hallucinations. My rational brain seized on that, needing it like a rope. But a seed of unease had been planted. I worked through the next hour, sealing cracks in the room with tape and plastic, setting up a portable heater. Sweat trickled under my thermal layers as the air slowly warmed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being listened to. Every time I switched off my lantern, the dark seemed to press closer, and behind it came that almost voice, like someone breathing words just beyond comprehension. I sat down finally, chewing on dried rations, when I heard it again. Louder this time. Elias, spoken in my own voice. I stood so fast the lantern rattled. My hands went to my sidearm without thought, the metal cold even through gloves. My own voice, from somewhere in the vents above. I backed against the wall, pulse pounding. My training screamed at me, do not panic, assess, break the problem down. If it was an intruder, they had somehow mimicked me. If it was wind, then I was already slipping into auditory hallucination, something I couldn't afford, not this early in the mission. But as I stared at the vent grates above, watching frost drift from their edges with the breathing of the storm outside, I knew this wasn't normal. Something had waited here. Something was awake. And it knew my name. I kept my weapon drawn longer than I should have, my arms starting to burn from tension, my breath loud inside my mask. The vent above me stayed still, silent except for the faint rattle of wind through the ducts. The station was old, its guts corroded, its lungs filled with frost. Rationally, it could have been pressure shifts, metal contracting in the cold, but rationality felt like thin fabric stretched over something far larger, pressing from underneath. I holstered the pistol but didn't let go of the unease. Old habits never died. In Special Forces, we learned to treat every unusual sound as a possible threat until proven otherwise. Better to be paranoid and alive than dismissive and dead. The voice, my voice, still echoed inside me. Hearing your own name in a place where no one should be felt like a wire pulled tight between reality and something else. I forced myself back into tasks. That was survival. Keep moving, keep working, don't let the mind collapse inward. I gathered my portable sensors, set them to scan air quality, checked for radiation leaks. Numbers came back clean, though the Geiger counter ticked more than I liked near the generator room. The Soviets hadn't been gentle with safety protocols back then. By the time I finished, night had fully claimed the world outside. Through cracks in the boards, I saw nothing but black snow swirling against the windows. My headlamp was now my sun, my lantern my hearth, and beyond them was a void waiting to swallow me. I needed to confirm the rest of the station before bedding down. It was procedure, and more than that, it was the only way to quiet my instincts. If I didn't see every corner for myself, I'd spend the night imagining worse things in them. The first hallway stretched narrow and ribbed with ice, doors frozen half shut, their nameplates in Cyrillic. My boots crunched on shards of old glass. The air smelled faintly of ammonia and mildew. My headlamp beam wavered across maps tacked to walls, edges curling like burned paper. As I passed the first junction, I froze. Whispers. Not loud this time, just a susurration in the ducts, like a group of people speaking too softly to be heard. I strained, pressing my ear toward the grate, and there it was again. Elias. Not just my name. Other words too, low and warped, some in Spanish, some in English. A chorus of voices all mine, like echoes of myself speaking things I'd never said. My stomach turned to ice. I backed away, my lamp beam jittering across the frost as though it too were nervous. I nearly retreated then, back to the sealed control rooms, back to the fragile safety of heater and lantern. But the soldier in me rebelled against retreat. If I didn't push forward, the fear would win, and fear was a predator of its own. So I pressed on. I opened a door with my boot, its hinges screaming in protest, and stepped into what looked like a dormitory. Bunk beds stood in rows, mattresses collapsed into heaps of mold and ice. The walls bore graffiti scratched deep into paint, names and tally marks in Russian. At the far end, a mirror hung crooked, the glass cracked but intact. My headlamp caught my reflection, gaunt, pale in the harsh light, eyes shadowed by exhaustion. I almost looked like a stranger already. I turned away quickly, but something in the corner of my eye twitched wrong. When I snapped my head back, the reflection had its mouth open. Mine was shut. I stumbled back, swore, swung the lamp wildly. The mirror showed nothing unusual now, just me, panting, weapon half raised. But the impression lingered like frostbite in the nerves. My reflection had whispered. A laugh, faint and broken, seeped from the vent above the bunks. I slammed the door shut behind me and gritted my teeth so hard I thought they'd crack. The corridor stretched on, and the air grew colder the deeper I went, my breath crystallizing instantly. I passed more doors, storage rooms filled with rusting equipment, a mess hall where tables sat overturned, the remnants of canned food split open by freeze and time. Each space was a tomb, frozen in a moment, decades gone. But always the sound followed, a scrape in the duct, a murmur that slipped just under hearing. Sometimes it was English, sometimes Spanish, sometimes something else, a garbled throat sound that almost made words. I found myself checking over my shoulder constantly, expecting to see myself standing there. By the time I reached the generator room, my nerves were stretched thin as piano wire. The door was heavy, industrial, rimmed with frost. I pushed it open with a grunt. The generator loomed in the center, a rust-streaked beast of metal and pipe. Icicles hung from its valves. With luck, it could still give me power. I checked gauges, switches, fuel intake. Surprisingly, it wasn't in the worst condition, probably preserved by the cold. I primed it, muttered a curse, and hit ignition. The machine roared, then coughed into a steady thrum. Lights flickered to life along the ceiling, weak and jaundiced, casting the room in a dim pulse. For the first time since arrival, I felt a thread of relief. Electricity meant heat, meant communication later, meant control. I almost laughed. Then the intercom crackled. A speaker above the door came alive with static screeching in my ears. I spun, weapon raised, eyes scanning for movement. The hiss of white noise filled the room like boiling water. And then, Elias Navarro. My full name. My exact voice. I felt my knees weaken. The voice on the intercom was me, down to the cadence, the rasp in the throat. But I hadn't spoken. It continued, distorted by static but unmistakable. You shouldn't have come. The words stabbed into me, colder than the air. I stepped back, chest heaving, scanning the walls as if I could catch the source. The intercom spat another burst of static, then silence. I wanted to rip the whole system out, but my hands trembled too much. Instead, I shut down the generator, plunging the station back into the comfort of my lamp's glow. I couldn't risk giving it more power, more ways to reach me. I stumbled back toward the control room, forcing myself not to run. Running would break me, would give the thing chasing me a victory it hadn't earned yet. My boots echoed in the halls, but sometimes I thought I heard a second set, delayed, imitating. Back inside my sealed space, I bolted the door, checked every corner twice, then sat with my back to the wall, pistol across my lap. My lantern light seemed too fragile, my own breath too loud. Somewhere above in the vents I heard a sigh. And this time it was not my voice. It was dozens, hundreds, all saying the same word in unison, Elias. The sound crawled down the ducts like frost, filling every corner of the room. I pressed the muzzle of the pistol against my forehead just for the grounding cold of it, reminding myself that I was real. Flesh, blood, training. But the question wormed in anyway. If something here could wear my voice, what else of me could it steal? Sleep was out of the question. My body begged for it, but my nerves were live wires, sparking under every sound. Even silence felt weaponized here, like the station itself had ears. I sat with my lantern burning low, pistol balanced across my thighs, back pressed against the wall where I could see both the door and the single vent overhead. My training told me to control my breathing, regulate adrenaline, but my mind kept circling back to the intercom. That voice had been mine. Not an echo, not a trick of wind. It had known my full name. No one outside this job should even have that intel. I'd been brought here alone. So what was I fighting? The storm outside wailed against the steel walls, but under it came another sound, a rhythm, a kind of tapping that threaded itself through the ducts like a coded message, not random, deliberate. 3 taps, pause, 3 more. I froze, counting them out. I'd taught men Morse code once back when I was still Captain Navarro, and this sounded close. The pattern for S, repeated over and over, SOS. My throat tightened. Was it possible? Someone trapped? Another survivor? Maybe an old squatter, desperate and half-mad? I wanted to believe that. My soldier's brain leapt to rescue mode, assess, locate, extract. But the deeper part of me, the part forged by deserts and alleys where unseen snipers waited, knew better. This was bait. Still, I had to confirm. I unsealed the door, lantern in one hand, weapon in the other. The hallway stretched empty, but not silent. The tapping continued, moving now like it was traveling through the vents ahead of me, leading me deeper. Navarro? The whisper slipped out of the dark. I spun, lamp beam trembling. My own voice again, but younger, lighter, The voice I remembered from years back before too many nights on deployments had ground it down. "You left them," it said. The words hit like a blow. My chest constricted. I hadn't told anyone, not the scientists, not the handlers who'd hired me for this contract. That memory was mine alone, buried in years of denial. Syria. An extraction gone wrong, my men pinned down in a courtyard, radio screaming for air support. I'd been ordered to pull back, to save what I could. I had obeyed, dragging 2 survivors out while 3 stayed behind, shredded by gunfire. I'd lived. They hadn't. The guilt had followed me into every dream since, and now, here in this tomb of ice and steel, something whispered it in my voice. My grip on the pistol shook. "Who are you?" I barked, my breath fogging white. The whisper chuckled, a dry, rasping mimicry. Then silence. I pressed forward anyway. I had to. Every instinct screamed trap, but the soldier in me couldn't sit back while a voice cried SOS. Whether human or not, I had to see. The corridor sloped downward, deeper into the station's belly. My lamp illuminated broken signage, frost-glazed pipes, ice blooming across concrete. The air grew colder, heavy with a smell like wet iron. My boots echoed as though the station itself was hollow. The tapping grew louder. Then words again, no whisper this time. Clear, distinct. "Help me." Not just in my voice, in another voice too. A man's, Russian, pleading. I stumbled into a large chamber, maybe a laboratory once. Tables lined with shattered beakers and rusted instruments, shelves warped with ice, and at the far end, a door sealed with a heavy wheel lock. The voice came from behind it. "Help me, Elias." I stepped closer. The hair on my neck stood rigid. My lamp shivered across the frost-coated steel. Then came the sound that undid me. Screams, not one, but many. Men shouting in Spanish, in English, in Russian. Gunfire, explosions, all of it bleeding out of the steel door like memory made flesh. My knees nearly buckled. I was back there, in the dust of Syria, in the chaos of firefights, dragging bodies, hearing my men die. I slammed my fist against the door. "Stop!" I roared. "Shut up!" The sounds cut off instantly, and then, softly, the voices began laughing. Not just mine, not just soldiers, 100 versions all braided together, deep, high, broken, smooth. Laughter like ice cracking on a lake. I staggered back, heart jackhammering. This wasn't human, it wasn't memory, it was using memory, weaponizing it. The lantern flickered, the laughter spread into the ducts, rising, falling, echoing around me until I couldn't tell where it began or ended. My own voice mixed in, perfectly synchronized, mocking. "Elias Navarro," they chorused, "the one who comes back." I turned and ran. Training be damned, my body moved before thought. My boots pounded frost-slick floors, lamp beam whipping across walls, shadows stretching like claws. The laughter chased me, threading through vents, doubling back, always ahead and behind. By the time I reached the control room again, I was gasping, chest burning. I slammed the door, sealed it, braced my back against it. But the room wasn't silent anymore. The intercom above hissed to life. Static crackled, then a voice spoke. Not mine. A woman's, soft, almost kind. "Elias," it said, "you're cold. You're tired. Let me in." My stomach dropped. That voice, I knew it. Isabel, my sister. Dead 5 years now, lost to cancer in a Madrid hospital. I hadn't heard her voice since the last phone call when she told me she was proud of me despite everything. And here it was, coming through rusted Soviet speakers in the Arctic night. I fell to my knees. Lantern light casting monstrous shadows across the frost-bitten consoles. My pistol clattered beside me. "Elias," Isabel's voice repeated, soothing, coaxing. "You don't have to be alone anymore." I pressed my palms over my ears, but it seeped through bone, through memory. I could almost feel her presence in the room, as if the shadows had taken her shape. "Let me in." The words weren't hers. Not really. But they were close enough to splinter me. My hands shook as I picked up the pistol again, aiming it at the intercom like I could shoot sound itself. My voice broke as I whispered, "You're not her." The speaker fizzed, then gave a sound like a sigh, and the last thing I heard before the static swallowed it was my own voice, layered over hers, speaking in unison. "Yes, I am." The pistol shook in my grip, not from cold, but from the weight of what I was facing. A voice that were the dead. a mimicry that could reach through memory, pluck out the names and tones I'd buried deepest, and lay them bare. The intercom clicked off, leaving only silence thick enough to choke on. I stood there in the dim glow of the lantern, every instinct screaming at me to flee. But flee where? Outside was a killing storm. Inside was this thing that knew me better than I knew myself. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, pressing the muzzle against the floor until the trembling stopped. The soldier in me had to stay alive, even if the man wanted to collapse. Movement, it came from the hall. Not in the ducts this time, not whispers or taps, but boots. Heavy, measured, like my own cadence when I marched. I swung toward the sealed door, pistol raised, heart battering my ribs. The footsteps grew louder, steady, closing in. I could almost picture the silhouette beyond. Helmeted, pack slung, rifle in hand. A soldier. Me. The handle twitched. I pressed my back to the wall, weapon sighted, ready to put rounds through anything that entered. The bolt rattled once, twice, then stilled. And then a voice, perfect, exact, spoke from the other side. "Elias, open the door. We're safe here." I grit my teeth so hard they ached, my own voice. Calm, convincing. The lantern flickered, my nerves snapped like overstretched wire. I barked into the silence. "Show yourself." The door creaked open a fraction, enough for cold air to spill in, enough for me to see it, myself. I swear on every scar I've earned, I saw me standing there. Same parka, same gear, even the scar along my jawline. My own headlamp gleamed back at me, beams slicing across my lantern light. He held his pistol low, just like I had, his movements eerily synchronized. For a heartbeat, we both stood frozen, two reflections broken loose from the mirror. Then it smiled. A smile I hadn't made in years. Wide. Too wide. I fired. The lantern flared at the muzzle flash, the shot deafening in the steel chamber. The figure staggered back, dissolved into shadow, and the door slammed shut with a force that rattled bolts from their hinges. I stumbled forward, yanked it open. Only empty hall met me, my shot's echo ringing through the ducts. No blood, no body, only frost mist curling like breath in the dark. I backed into the control room again, chest heaving. I'd shot at myself, and it had vanished. My mind screamed hallucination, stress fracture, hypothermia, delusion, but the casing lay at my feet, warm metal proof. It had been real enough to take a bullet. I turned off the lantern, plunging the room into pure headlamp glow. Shadows pressed in. I felt them leaning close, hungry. I set my jaw, forcing my thoughts into tactical clarity. Identify, isolate, improvise. This wasn't a fight I could win with bullets. Whatever this was, it wanted me afraid, broken. It wanted me to question what was mine and what was stolen. My best weapon wasn't firepower, it was discipline. I stripped my pack open, pulling emergency flares, glow sticks, my survival knife. Tools became lifelines. I rigged a flare near the vent, lit it. The room bled red, heat pushing frost back an inch. Shadows shrank. For the first time since stepping into this hell, the voices faltered. I laughed, raw and sharp. "Don't like fire, do you?" I growled into the ducts. The answer came immediately. Not from vents, not from the intercom, from right behind me. "Neither do you." I spun, knife in one hand, pistol in the other, flare spitting sparks on the floor. And there it was again, me. Not a ghost, not a flicker, but standing full-bodied in the corner, grinning through smoke. Its parka was torn, burned at the edges as if fire had already touched it. But its eyes were alive, black and bottomless. It lunged. I fired point blank. The shot tore through its chest, but instead of falling, it split, its body unraveling into shadow and smoke that whipped around me, laughing in dozens of my voices. Hands, my hands, brushed across my throat, my shoulders, pushing me off balance. I slashed with the knife, the blade cutting only air, sparks spraying from steel, striking steel as if the shadow had mass and none at once. The flare sputtered out. Darkness swallowed everything. I staggered, lantern crushed underfoot, headlamp beam whipping wildly. My lungs sucked in air that tasted wrong, metallic, damp, like I was breathing something else's breath. Then, from every duct, every corner, came my voice. Hundreds layered, chanting in perfect rhythm. "You left them. You left them. You left them." I clamped my hands over my ears, screaming, but it poured straight into my skull, into memory. The courtyard in Syria replayed. Gunfire, blood, men falling while I dragged others away. Faces twisted in betrayal. The shadow of myself leaned close, its lips to my ear. This time, it whispered, there is no one left to save. I dropped to my knees, knife slipping from my hand. My body wanted to surrender, to curl into a ball and let it finish me. But something in me, the soldier, the survivor, the brother who had promised his sister he'd always come back, flared hotter than fear. I grabbed the last flare from my pack, slammed it against the floor. The chamber erupted in searing light, red and furious. The shadow me shrieked, its grin splitting unnaturally wide before bursting apart into a storm of black fragments that howled into the vents. Silence slammed down. The only sound left was my ragged breathing, my heart hammering like gunfire. The flare hissed on the floor, its glow bleeding across frost and metal. I stared at it, knowing it wouldn't last forever, knowing the dark would return. But I'd learned something. The thing could wear my face, my voice, my past, but it feared fire, heat, light. For now, that was enough. I sat back against the wall, flare burning low, pistol still in my grip. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but survival was about one thing, buying time, and tonight, time burned red at my feet. The flare hissed and spat on the floor, a molten nerve in the frozen dark. Its red light painted the steel walls like blood smeared across bone. I crouched over it, pistol low, scanning every vent and corner. My pulse slowed, not calm, not relief, but the deliberate rhythm of discipline. I had survived worse than shadows. I had survived men who wanted me dead. I would survive this. But survival required action. I yanked my pack open, pulling out every flare I had. 6 left. I laid them in a line beside me, each one a chance to carve back the dark. I clipped glow sticks to my vest, cracked 2, and let their chemical green seep across the frost. Shadows retreated a fraction more. The silence wasn't silence anymore. It was listening. I could feel it. The station had gone still not because the danger was gone, but because it was watching me think. Fine. Let it watch. I would show it what it meant to hunt a soldier. I slung my pack, flare in one hand, pistol in the other, and moved out of the control room. The hallway beyond was a throat of frost and steel. The glow of my flare bleeding against walls etched with old graffiti. My boots struck deliberate rhythm. I wanted it to hear me coming. The plan was crude but simple. Light, heat, fire. Force it back into whatever pit it crawled from. I chose the mess hall first. Long tables stood like corpses under rime, overturned chairs frozen in place. The shadows thickened here, curling along the ceiling, shivering against the flare's glow. I jammed one into a rusted bracket on the wall, its light pulsing. A beacon. A ward. Come on, I growled under my breath, voice ragged. Face me where I can see you. The air shuddered. From the far corner, a figure rose out of shadow, taller than me but shaped like me. Its eyes glowed faint green, reflecting the glow sticks. Its mouth opened and a dozen voices poured out, layered and broken. You're already dead. I raised the pistol, fired twice. The rounds punched through it like smoke, ricocheting off steel behind. The shadow convulsed, dissolved into tendrils that slithered back into the ducts. The mess hall laughed with 100 throats. I swallowed hard. One flare wasn't enough. I needed to trap it, corner it, force it into light. It couldn't escape. So I made the station a fire line. Room by room, I pressed forward. Lab, dormitory, storage, dropping flares and glow sticks, leaving behind a trail of red and green light like breadcrumbs. Each room hissed with retreating darkness. Each duct groaned with fury as the voices followed me. It taunted me in every voice I'd ever loved. Isabel's soft lullabies, my sister's dying laugh, my mother's Spanish prayers, my comrades calling orders, screaming for backup. It played them all through the vents until my throat bled from shouting back. You don't own me. I roared into the ducts. You can wear my voice, but you'll never be me. The response was a whisper that came from everywhere at once. Then why do you run? My boots faltered. My flare hissed lower, the red glow shrinking, and in that failing light I saw something that nearly broke me. The bunks. The dormitory I'd passed earlier wasn't empty anymore. Figures sat on the beds, hunched in ragged uniforms, frost clinging to their bodies. My men, the ones who had died in Syria, their faces pale, shredded by wounds I remembered too well. Capitan, one croaked, voice ruined by blood. I stumbled backward, pistol aimed but useless. My hands shook so violently the flare nearly slipped from my grip. You left us, another said, eyes sunk in pits of shadow. No, I whispered, choking. I saved who I could. They stood in unison, moving like marionettes. Each one's mouth opened, and out came my voice, cold and hollow. You left us. You left us. The shadows surged, flooding toward me in a tide of black limbs. I snapped. Training overrode horror. I struck my last match against the flare's casing, jammed it into a rag of cloth I'd doused in fuel from the generator room earlier. Flame burst in my hand, wild and hungry. I hurled it onto a bunk. Fire leapt. The dormitory howled, the shadows convulsing, twisting away from the heat. Figures shrieked as their forms warped, melting like wax. The entire bunk line ignited, flames racing along rotten mattresses, black smoke belching toward the ceiling. I staggered back, coughing, eyes watering, but I smiled. The fire roared and the thing screamed with it. You don't like the heat? I rasped, voice hoarse. Then burn! For a moment, I thought it might actually work. For a moment, the station felt mine. Then from behind me, a new sound. Footsteps, slow, measured, deliberate. Not rushing, not attacking, just walking. I turned, flare raised, pistol sighting down, and froze. It was me again, but not like before. Not a shadow double, not a grin split too wide. This one looked exact, from the stubble on my jaw to the scuffed boots on my feet. He even carried the same pistol, raised in a mirror of my stance. We stood in the smoke, eyes locked, each of us aiming at the other. Which one are you? He asked. His voice was mine, but steady, calm, confident, the version of me I remembered before everything went wrong, before guilt had hollowed me. I'm me, I spat. He smiled, not cruel, not mocking, but patient. Then prove it. And he fired. The round sang past my ear, ricocheted off steel. My flare dropped, spinning across the floor. The shadow me charged, and for the first time I realized the truth. It didn't just want to mimic me. It wanted to replace me. The shot cracked my skull with its echo. Sparks rained down where the bullet had gouged metal. My double moved fast, low, military trained, the way I would move. I barely had time to throw myself sideways before he was on me. We collided shoulder first, a brutal crunch that drove the air from my lungs. I hit the floor hard, my pistol skidding across frost-slick steel. My flare sputtered, half smothered by smoke, leaving the room pulsing red and black. The double loomed over me, gun aimed at my chest. I'm you, he said, voice steady. You're the echo. I snarled, grabbing a shard of broken chair leg and swinging it upward. It cracked across his jaw, staggering him. I lunged, grappling him in the smoke, our bodies identical in weight and strength. Every move I made, he countered. Every strike I threw, he anticipated. It was like fighting a mirror trained to kill. We slammed against bunks as fire roared higher. Heat seared my face, flames chewing through wood and frost. My double's hand locked around my throat, his grip iron squeezing the air from me. I clawed at his wrist, veins bulging in my neck, vision sparking at the edges. Let go, he whispered, his voice curling into my ear. You're tired. You've been tired for years. I can carry this for you. My lungs convulsed, chest screaming for air. My hand groped blindly across the floor until fingers brushed metal, my knife. I drove it upward, bearing the blade into his side. He gasped, my gasp, and staggered back. I rolled to my knees, dragging in ragged gulps of smoke-tainted air, knife dripping black shadow instead of blood. The wound closed before my eyes, flesh knitting like wax melting and hardening again. He smiled. Good. You fight. That's why I want you. The words froze me. It didn't just want to kill me. It wanted to become me. My strength, my scars, my memories. It wanted my survival. Rage exploded in me hotter than fear. You'll never have me, I spat, snatching up my pistol from the floor. I fired point blank, once, twice, 3 times. Bullets tore through his chest, each one sparking against the steel behind. His body jerked but didn't fall. Instead, he straightened, holes sealing, grin widening. The voices rose again, my voice, my sister's, my men's, all layered into a chorus. Elias Navarro, let go, let go, let go. I stumbled back, pistol empty, chest heaving. My double advanced step by step, movements calm, measured. The fire behind him painted his silhouette in hell light. I reached into my pack, fingers fumbling until they closed around the last flare. My lifeline. I yanked it free, slammed it against the floor. The flare roared alive, red fire flooding the room. My double staggered, features distorting under the glow. His skin rippled, his eyes darkened, his form trembling as though torn between solidity and shadow. I pressed forward, shoving the flare toward his chest. He screamed, a sound like steel twisting, like voices shredding into static. His body rippled, warped, dissolved into a writhing storm of black tendrils that lashed against the ceiling. The station howled with him, vents clanged, walls shook, the very steel seemed to buckle under the force of his rage. I staggered backward, shielding my face from the heat and the fragments of shadow whipping around me. The storm sucked back into the ducts, into the vents, into the hollow bones of the station itself. Silence crashed down, broken only by the roar of the fire spreading across bunks. I collapsed to my knees, flare hissing beside me, smoke choking the air. My chest felt like it might split open, but the double was gone. For now. I forced myself to move, stumbling into the corridor, leaving the fire to devour the dormitory. My boots echoed down steel halls, smoke trailing after me. I needed air. I needed out. The main entrance was a blur of ice and shadow. I slammed the airlock lever, forcing the frozen mechanism to yield. Wind screamed as the door cracked open, snow blasting in like shards of glass. I stumbled outside into the storm's black maw, flare held high. The cold hit like a hammer. The wind stole my breath, stole the heat from my bones, but I didn't care. Anything was better than being trapped in that tomb of voices. I staggered across the snowfield toward the snowcat, flare sputtering in my hand. The world was a blur of white and red and shadow. My boots sank deep, every step an act of will. The wind carried whispers even here, faint but insistent, threading through the storm. Elias, I bit down so hard my teeth rattled, I wouldn't listen. Not anymore. The snowcat loomed ahead, half buried, its windows iced over. I clawed the door open, threw myself inside, slammed it shut against the screaming wind. The cab was dark, frozen stiff. My hands shook as I jammed the flare into a bracket, letting its light flood the space. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe I'd escaped. Then I saw the frost on the windshield. At first, it was just ice crystals. Then, slowly, deliberately, they began to spread into words, etching themselves across the glass as though a hand were writing from the outside. Welcome back, Echo. My breath caught. The flare hissed lower, its red light shrinking, and in the reflection of the windshield, I saw not one face, but two, both mine. One smiling. The flare hissed weakly, its red glow crawling across the snowcat's cab like dying embers. My breath steamed, fogging the windshield until I could barely read the words scrawled in frost. Welcome back, Echo. The reflection stared at me. Not one face, but two, both mine. One pale and hollow-eyed, the other smiling with that same wrongness I'd seen in the station. My throat clenched. I raised the pistol on instinct, but the reflection didn't flinch. My smiling twin just leaned closer against the glass, lips moving in perfect sync with mine. You left them, it mouthed. No, I whispered, my voice breaking against the storm's howl outside. Not again. The flare spat sparks. Its light began to dim. The cab grew colder, too cold. I watched frost creep along the steering column, the dashboard, spidering across every surface as if the metal itself were freezing from the inside. My gloved fingers stiffened as they clutched the wheel. Then came the sound, a slow, steady rhythm. Breathing. Not mine. I froze, every nerve screaming. The breath came from behind me, wet and deliberate, fogging the window at my back. I spun, pistol up. No one there. Just shadows bleeding into corners, darker than they should have been. The flare's glow warped, stretching those shadows long across the cab until they pooled at my boots. And from those pools, hands began to rise. My hands. Pale, scarred, familiar. They grasped at my ankles, my wrists, my throat. I roared, slamming my heel down, kicking one away, firing into the floor. Bullets sparked off steel, but the hands didn't bleed. They dissolved into black vapor, only to reform again. "You're tired," my voice said from the dark. "Let me drive." The steering wheel jerked on its own, had the engine coughing alive, though I hadn't touched the key. The snowcat roared, treads grinding against ice. We lurched forward into the storm. I fought the wheel, muscles straining. My reflection in the windshield laughed soundlessly, its mouth gaping wider, black vapor seeping from its teeth. The snowcat surged into the blizzard, lights carving tunnels through endless white. But the more we moved, the less real it felt. The windows no longer showed snow, only shadow rolling and shifting like smoke caught in glass. The horizon bent, twisted. The road was gone. The tundra was gone. All that remained was blackness alive with whispers. I slammed the butt of my pistol into the windshield, glass spiderwebbing under the blow. "You're not real," I roared. "You're nothing." The smiling face leaned close through the cracks. "Then why do you bleed like me?" The words weren't sound. They were thought. They burrowed straight into my skull, bypassing ears. My nose stung. I wiped with my glove. Blood. No, I wouldn't give in. I clawed into my pack, fingers shaking until they found the last glow stick. I cracked it, green light spilling into the cab, clashing with the flare's dying red. Shadows recoiled, writhing as though burned. The hands dissolved into smoke again. For one heartbeat, I had control. I seized it. Slamming the snowcat into reverse, I wrenched the wheel hard, metal groaning under strain. The machine screeched, treads digging deep into ice, throwing me against the seat. The windshield fractured further, light scattering in jagged lines across the cab. The face in the glass shattered into dozens of me, all laughing. "You're already mine," they said together. The snowcat lurched, then slammed to a stop. I was thrown forward, forehead cracking against the wheel. The flare slipped, sputtered out, plunging the cab into sickly green glow. Outside, the storm fell silent. I lifted my head slowly. The windshield was no longer iced, no longer fractured. It was gone. Through the frame, I looked into a void, an endless black horizon where snow and sky had been erased. The only thing that remained was my own reflection, hovering in that dark like glass suspended in air. It smiled. I raised the pistol with a shaking hand, breath ragged. The reflection mirrored me perfectly, until the last second when it didn't. It turned the gun to its own temple and pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. Glass shattered, the void howled, the cab filled with smoke and screams, not mine, not human. The reflection dissolved into a storm of shadows, pouring into the cab, wrapping around my throat, my chest, squeezing until I thought I'd burst. I screamed back, raw and defiant, jamming the glow stick against the dashboard. The plastic cracked, liquid splattering, neon fire spilled across steel, hissing as it burned into shadow flesh. The thing shrieked recoiling light, writhing back into the void outside. The windshield snapped back into place. Snow. Blizzard. Reality. I collapsed against the seat, chest heaving, pistol clattering from my grip. The glow stick pulsed weak green, painting my hands with light. For the first time since I arrived, the voices were gone. But I didn't believe it, not for a second. I stared at my reflection in the glass. Just one face now. Hollow-eyed, bloodied, exhausted. But behind the eyes, deep in the pupils, I thought I saw something shift. Something still watching. The snowcat idled, engine rattling like an old man's lungs. But the sound was steady, grounding me in a way nothing else could. The glow stick on the dash pulsed faintly, its green light a fragile line between me and the dark that wanted me. I stared out into the storm. At some point, the howling wind had thinned. The blizzard no longer slammed like fists against the cab. Instead, snow fell softer, swirling in quiet spirals that almost looked calm. Almost. The silence should have been relief. It wasn't. Because silence meant it was listening again. I touched the cracked windshield with one gloved finger, half expecting the frost words to reappear. Nothing. Only my reflection staring back, gaunt, eyes ringed red, blood dried across my temple where I'd hit the wheel. But I didn't trust him. I didn't trust me. The flare was gone. My last glow stick was bleeding its final light. The pistol was empty. All I had left were knives, instinct, and stubbornness. that had gotten me through deserts and alleys and firefights. It would have to get me through this. I slammed the snowcat into gear. The treads groaned, bit into the ice, and the machine lurched forward across the plateau. My headlights carved narrow tunnels through the storm. The world stretched endless in every direction. White ground, white sky. And yet, after 5 minutes of driving, I realized something was wrong. I hadn't moved. The same ridge loomed in the distance. The same cluster of skeletal antenna towers jutted from snow like broken teeth. The same half-buried bulk of Station Kurova crouched on the horizon, exactly where I'd left it. I swore under my breath, wrenching the wheel, turning hard east. The machine rumbled, throwing snow from its treads. I drove blind, teeth grinding, breath fogging my visor. 10 minutes later, I saw it again. The ridge, the antennas, the station, always in front of me. I slammed both fists against the wheel. The cab rattled with the blow, my voice hoarse as I screamed into the storm. "Let me out!" Silence answered, then slowly a new sound, low, guttural, laughter, not human, not exactly me, not even an echo of Isabel or my men. Something else now, something older. The snowcat stuttered, engine coughing, the headlights flickered, and through that flickering light, the snow moved. Not with wind, with purpose. Shapes rose from the drifts, human silhouettes staggering toward me. At first I thought hallucination, mirage, but the closer they came, the more detail I saw. Uniforms, Spanish patches, Syrian dust caked into torn fatigues, men I knew, faces I'd lost. "Capitan," one of them croaked, frost cracking across his lips. "We found you." I pressed back into the seat, pistol raised though it was empty. "No, you're not them. You can't be." The figures pressed their hands against the windshield, their skin gray, their eyes black hollows. Snow smeared under their palms, streaking across the glass. "You left us," they whispered. My voice. Their voices. All at once. I roared and fired the pistol anyway, empty chamber clicking again and again. The recoil that wasn't there still shook my arms. The shapes didn't flinch. Instead, they leaned closer, faces pressing to the glass until frost cracked around them. Behind them, the station loomed again. But this time, lights glowed in its windows, warm, golden, impossible. Cabin light warmth, a place of refuge. My chest ached. A trap, every nerve screamed. But the sight clawed at something in me that hadn't felt warmth in days, in years. "You're tired," one of my dead whispered. "Come inside, rest." The snowcat engine sputtered, growled, then died. Silence crashed down. The glow stick on the dash flickered and went black. Darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment I thought I'd gone blind. Then a light bloomed outside, soft and golden. The station windows glowed like lanterns in the storm, and in the driver's seat beside me, where no one had been, someone sat. Me. Not the smiling double, not the shadow-ragged thing. Just me, whole, calm, face unlined, eyes steady. He turned to me slowly, as though we had all the time in the world. "You can't leave," he said gently. My own voice. "This is where you belong." My throat closed. My hands trembled. I wanted to deny it, to scream. But some part of me knew he was right. I'd been carrying ghosts for years. Men I'd lost. My sister. Mistakes that chewed my sleep. Maybe this place hadn't created them. Maybe it had only shown me what I'd already been dragging like chains. Maybe this station was never abandoned. Maybe it had always been waiting for me. I clenched my knife until the hilt bit into my palm. "If you want me," I hissed, "you'll have to take me fighting." My double smiled, calm and patient. He didn't lunge, he didn't attack, he just leaned close, pressed his hand to the windshield, and whispered one word, "Echo." And outside, 1,000 voices whispered it back. The storm had stilled into silence, but the silence was worse than wind. It pressed on the cab like a weight, thick with every voice I'd ever carried. My reflection beside me didn't move. He just sat there, hands calm on his knees, watching with eyes that mirrored mine too perfectly. "Echo," he said again. The word burrowed into me, settling in my chest like a brand. "No," I rasped, voice raw. "I'm Elias Navarro. I'm real." "Are you?" he asked, tilting his head. "Or are you the copy that crawled out when the real one didn't make it back from Syria? Or the brother who should have died in Madrid with Isabel? Or maybe—" He leaned closer. his breath fogging the glass though the storm outside had stopped. Maybe you're just the sound the wind makes, pretending to be a man. The knife shook in my hand, my pulse hammered so loud it drowned the engine's dead silence. You're not me, I whispered. He smiled. Not wide, not cruel, just knowing. Prove it. The cab stretched long in the dark, warped by shadow. The glass no longer showed the storm, or the station, or even the tundra, just endless black, filled with faint ripples like the surface of water. Reflections swam in it, hundreds of me, all moving just a second too slow, like echoes of thought. I slammed the knife into my thigh, pain screaming through muscle, grounding me in red agony. I gritted my teeth, panting, watching blood seep into the fabric of my thermal pants. I bleed, I hissed. You don't. My double smile flickered. For the first time, his face rippled, features warping for half a heartbeat before settling back. Good, he said softly. Then bleed for both of us. The cab erupted. Shadows poured through vents, through cracks in the steel, through the glass itself. They surged around me, hands dragging at my arms, my legs, my throat. All of them wore my face, all whispering in perfect unison. Echo, echo, echo. I roared, slashing with the knife, stabbing into smoke, cutting through wrists that dissolved and reformed. My body screamed with effort, wounds tearing, lungs clawing for breath. The dashboard lights flickered. For a split second, I saw the gauges, the dials, the faint hum of power. The snowcat wasn't dead. It was waiting. I lunged forward, ripping shadows off me, and slammed my bloodied palm against the ignition. The engine roared. Lights blazed. Shadows shrieked, recoiling like animals burned. My double snarled, face cracking wide, black eyes flaring. This won't save you, he screamed in my voice, a voice stripped of all humanity. But I didn't care. The treads bit into ice, the machine lurched forward, and I drove blind into the dark. Headlights cut tunnels through smoke, shadows peeling away under the blaze. My body shook with blood loss, my thigh a ragged throb of pain, but I kept the wheel locked straight, refusing to look at the mirrors where dozens of me clawed at the glass. The tundra stretched endless. White, black, nothing. Minutes blurred into hours or seconds. Time didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was movement. Survival. And then light. Faint. On the horizon. Not golden like the station's false lanterns, not red like the dying flares, pure white, shimmering. A ridge, faint against the sky. A real ridge, not the same one looping back. I drove harder, every muscle screaming, every shadow clinging. The snowcat rattled, engine bellowing like a beast dying. The white light grew, the shadows thinned, and suddenly the cab was empty. No reflection beside me, no whispers, no hands. Just me, panting, bleeding, driving into a dawn that split the horizon. I collapsed against the wheel, laughter tearing raw from my throat. Not joy, not victory, just release. The ridge rose higher, clearer. The storm behind me fell away. I had escaped, hadn't I? I glanced at the windshield, at the reflection staring back. My face, hollow-eyed, bloody, and smiling. The laughter came again, faint at first, then layered, 100 voices folding over mine. My own voice. Isabel's. My men's. You left them. I slammed the knife into the dash, screaming, but the sound was swallowed whole. The light on the horizon flickered. The ridge bent, just slightly wrong, and I realized maybe I had never left the station at all. Maybe I never would. Ending. I don't remember when the engine finally died. I don't remember if I crawled out into the snow or if I'm still sitting in that cab reflection grinning back. All I know is this: when the wind rises in the dark, sometimes it carries a voice. Sometimes it calls your name. And if you answer, it learns how to wear you. My name is Elias Rojas, and I've always believed in the logic of stone. Rock does not lie. The layers hold their history, written in compression and fracture, and if you learn to read them, they speak in a language older than humanity itself. That belief has carried me through years of field work, countless nights spent alone under the weight of mountains. It has also been the only anchor keeping me steady now, in this brutal and silent corner of Alaska. I was sent here under contract to survey a series of unusual seismic readings that had been recorded near the Wrangell Mountains, not far from an old research cabin abandoned in the 70s. The official explanation was routine monitoring, a precaution before expanding oil exploration licenses. But the data I'd been handed was anything but routine. Tremors that had no apparent epicenter, vibrations that pulsed in cycles like a heartbeat. At first, I thought it was faulty equipment, until the university insisted the readings were legitimate. The helicopter dropped me off 4 days ago. Just me, my equipment, and the relentless expanse of ice, granite, and silence. The pilot was eager to leave, warning me about sudden whiteouts and the odd stories locals like to tell. "Keep your radio charged, Rojas," he said, half joking, "and if the ground starts talking, don't answer back." I laughed then. Now I'm not so sure. The first thing you notice out here is the absence of life. No bird calls, no rustle of small animals, just wind dragging across the ice, the sound as hollow as breath through a skull. The cold has a weight to it. It presses into the lungs with every inhale. The air tastes metallic like frozen iron. Even the light feels harsh, too clean, too absolute. The snow is so white it burns your vision until you see phantom shadows dancing across it. The cabin I'm staying in creaks like an old man every time the wind shifts. The wood is brittle, blackened by decades of storms. Inside, I've set up my seismograph, my notebooks, and a steel cot with thin bedding. It smells of mold and kerosene. When night falls, the silence is so complete I can hear my heartbeat echo in my ears. And beneath that silence, something else, something I first dismissed as imagination. The second night I was here, I heard it. A vibration beneath the ice, faint but deliberate. It wasn't like an earthquake, no sudden jolt or shift. It was deeper, steadier. A low hum that I felt in my bones more than heard with my ears. The seismograph needle quivered in rhythm with it, as though the ground itself was breathing. I sat there for nearly an hour, staring at the machine, feeling the pulse throb against my boots through the cabin floor. And then, just before it faded, I could have sworn it changed. The rhythm shifted into something almost patterned. Pauses, beats like syllables. A voice without sound. I told myself I was tired, that the isolation was playing tricks. But the following evening it happened again, stronger. The hum rising through the glacier, the pattern unmistakable this time. My lips were dry, but I whispered without realizing, "Is someone there?" The moment I spoke, the vibrations stopped. A rush of silence flooded in, pressing so hard against my ears it hurt. Then, impossibly, the hum returned, answering me. One beat, two, a pause, another, like words spoken through the lungs of the earth. I stumbled back from the equipment, nearly tripping over my cot. The rational part of my mind clawed for footing, resonance, ice shifting, natural harmonics. But the rest of me, the quiet, hidden part, knew with cold certainty that I wasn't alone here. Something beneath the ice had heard me. The days since have blurred. I set out to take surface readings near a fissure a few hundred yards north, but the ground there feels wrong. Too hollow. The snow around it sags slightly, like a chest rising and falling. I dropped a stone into the crack, expecting to hear it clatter against hidden rock. Instead, it vanished into endless silence. At night, the hum grows stronger. I've stopped speaking aloud in the cabin, fearful that whatever listens below will answer again. Still, it sometimes hums in short bursts, as though reminding me of its presence. As though waiting. This morning, when I stepped outside, there were marks in the snow around the fissure. Not animal tracks. I've seen enough of those to know the difference. These were smooth, looping patterns that curved back on themselves, like concentric circles pressed lightly into the surface, as though the snow had rippled outward from a single point, frozen mid-motion. The seismograph is picking up something strange right now, even as I write. A steady rhythm, slower than a human heartbeat, but too deliberate to be random. It feels almost patient. The cabin walls groan as the wind lashes them, but beneath that, I can feel it vibrating in my ribs, whispering through marrow. My name. I swear it's saying my name. And God help me, I'm starting to want to answer again. By the fourth night, I stopped convincing myself that it was just the ice. Rational thought is a kind of armor, but it can crack, and once a fracture forms, it spreads through everything. I've been a geologist long enough to know that. I woke up to the sensation of my cot shaking. Not violently, but with the steady rhythm of something vast and deliberate moving beneath the cabin. The seismograph needle was scratching wild black lines, by each spike too uniform to be chance. I sat up, heart racing, and pressed my palm to the floor. The boards vibrated like the strings of a cello. Elias. Not out loud, not with a human tongue, but in my chest, in the hollow of my skull, the vibration became a shape. It became my name. I jerked my hand away as though burned. My instinct screamed at me to run into the snow, but the cold here is its own predator. Outside, the temperature plunged to nearly 40 below. Death would find me quicker out there than in here. So I stayed in the cabin, fists clenched, repeating to myself, it's harmonics, it's coincidence, it's not alive. But the thing about fear is that it doesn't need proof. It just needs repetition. The next day, I forced myself to leave the cabin. I told myself it was for data, but truthfully, I needed to feel the open sky above me, even if it was a blank white smear. The wind had died down, leaving an unnatural stillness that made every crunch of my boots sound like an intrusion. The fissure wasn't far. Each step toward it felt like stepping closer to something that had been waiting longer than I could imagine. When I reached it, the snow at the edges was gone, melted, not from heat. I saw no water, no steam. It was as though the snow had simply receded, revealing dark, wet ice beneath. The concentric circles were there again, etched more deeply, curling outward in spirals too perfect to be natural. I crouched, breath fogging, and touched the surface. It was warm. Not burning, but warm like living flesh under a thin layer of skin. I yanked my hand back, staring at the fog of my breath, trembling in the air, and then the hum began again, rising through the fissure. Stronger. Closer. I whispered without meaning to, the words torn from me like a confession. What do you want? The vibration stopped. The silence that followed was crushing, thick as stone pressing down on my chest. My ears rang, desperate for sound. Then, 3 sharp pulses, like knocks from below. A pause. Another 3. The exact cadence of a reply. I ran. I don't remember the sprint back to the cabin. I only remember slamming the door, leaning against it with my breath clawing in my throat. My equipment rattled on the table, the seismograph's needle dancing to an invisible hand. My rational mind was gone, splintered apart. Something beneath the ice had understood me. And worse, it had answered. That night I couldn't sleep. Every groan of the cabin, every tick of the cooling stove sounded like a message. My body ached with exhaustion, but every time my eyes closed, I felt the vibration begin again, threading through my ribs, whispering syllables I couldn't quite make out. It wasn't always my name now. Sometimes it was something else, words in a language I didn't know, each one sinking into me like a hook. By morning, I made a decision. I would not speak again. Whatever it was, it wanted communication, and if I denied it, perhaps it would fade. I filled my day with busy work, rechecking soil samples, cataloging readings, adjusting the antenna. I wrote in my notebook long strings of rational explanations, theories about ice resonance and frequency interference, lies I told myself on paper so I wouldn't collapse under the truth. But the hum didn't stop. It lingered at the edge of perception, always waiting. On the 5th night, I woke to a sound that wasn't mine. Breathing. Slow, wet inhalations just beyond the cabin wall. My skin prickled with cold sweat. I reached for my flashlight, clicked it on, and aimed it toward the thin slats where the wall had warped. The beam caught on frost and wood, and then shifted across a shadow that wasn't supposed to be there. A shape pressed against the outside boards as though something vast leaned close, listening. The sound of its breath shuddered through the walls, misting the cracks with ice. I didn't move, didn't dare. My chest ached with the effort of keeping quiet. The thing stayed there for what felt like hours, breathing, waiting. Then, just as sudden, it withdrew. Silence reclaimed the cabin. I didn't sleep again that night. Morning brought no relief. My hands shake even writing this. There are marks in the snow around the cabin now, those same concentric ripples I saw at the fissure, but larger, as though the ground itself had pulsed outward in waves. Something is rising beneath me, and it knows I'm here. By the 6th day, the isolation was no longer the hardest part. It was the pull. Every hour, the fissure seemed to drag at my thoughts like a current beneath the surface of a river. I'd catch myself staring north through the warped cabin window, imagining the spirals carved in the snow, the breath rising from the ice like steam. My mind tried to rationalize it as professional curiosity, but deep down I knew whatever lay beneath was calling me. I resisted at first. I busied myself with the seismograph, with sample bags, with pages of notes I would never send back. But when I blinked, when my focus faltered, I'd find my boots laced, my parka already pulled on, as though my body had prepared itself to leave without me realizing. Twice I stepped outside before I knew what I was doing. The cold slapped me back to awareness, saving me from continuing into that white expanse. I stopped eating much. The hunger dulled into nausea, and every sip of water tasted faintly metallic, like it had been drawn from some underground reservoir I shouldn't touch. My reflection in the cabin's cracked mirror grew gaunt, eyes shadowed, lips pale and cracked. And always, always, the hum. That night, I snapped awake to find myself standing at the cabin door with my hand on the latch. I hadn't put on boots, hadn't dressed. The cold leaked in through the seams, numbing my fingers, yet I'd been about to step into the snow barefoot. I slammed the lock shut and pressed my back against the door, panting like an animal. In the silence that followed, the vibration returned, stronger than ever, flooding through the floor, rattling my bones. And then, in that pulsing cadence, a message. Not my name this time, but words I somehow understood in the marrow of me. Come down. I screamed at it then. I don't remember the exact words, only the raw defiance tearing out of my throat, half plea, half rage. Leave me alone. The hum stopped, but the reply didn't come from beneath. It came from just outside the door. A knock, 3 times, slow, heavy. My blood went cold. My breath clamped in my throat. Something was standing on the other side of that thin slab of wood. I waited for another knock, another sound, but all I heard was the wind curling like a whisper around the cabin. When dawn bled through the cracks in the walls, I finally dared to open the door. The snow was marked again, but not in circles this time. Footprints. Bare, human-shaped footprints leading from the fissure straight to my cabin door. No trail away. Just arrival. I slammed it shut and braced the door with a chair, though I knew wood and steel meant nothing if that thing wanted in. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My thoughts tangled themselves into 1,000 knots. I couldn't trust my body, couldn't trust the silence, couldn't trust the ice. By afternoon, my radio crackled to life for the first time since I'd arrived. Static at first, then the faint outline of a voice. Rojas, do you copy? The pilot. Relief surged through me so strong it made my knees buckle. I snatched up the receiver. Yes, this is Rojas. I copy. Static, then weather, window, extraction, hold tight. And beneath the voice, faint but there, the hum, threading through the static, weaving itself into the transmission, as though it had found a way inside the signal itself. I dropped the radio, bile rising in my throat. The vibration lingered in the air, matching the beat of my heart. My relief curdled into dread. Even if the helicopter returned, even if I boarded it and left this place, what if it came with me? That night, I gave in. I don't know if it was exhaustion or madness or the inevitability of stone wearing down to sand. I found myself walking toward the fissure under the pale shimmer of the aurora. The air cracked with frost, stinging my lungs, but my steps were steady. My flashlight beam cut across the snow, catching the spirals carved deeper, wider, as if the land itself was marking my path. The fissure yawned before me, black and endless. I felt warmth bleeding up from it, fog rising in tendrils that smelled faintly of iron and wet stone. The hum swelled until my teeth ached. My knees nearly buckled, not from cold, but from the weight of presence. And then, whispers. Not from below, from behind. I spun, flashlight beam darting across empty snow. Empty, except for the footprints. More of them now, dozens, scattered and circling, all bare, all human-shaped. My light caught something else, too, a figure, just at the edge of its reach, pale, still, watching. I froze. The figure didn't move, didn't even sway in the wind. My breath steamed out in clouds. When I stepped back, the figure stepped forward. Slow, deliberate. The vibration surged, drowning out my thoughts, filling my chest with the shape of its command again. Come down. I don't remember fleeing, only the slam of the cabin door and the scrape of my chair as I shoved it against the frame. I collapsed against the wall, shaking, my flashlight still clenched in my hand. The seismograph needle scratched furiously like claws on paper. The hum did not fade. It pulsed with steady patience like a heartbeat waiting for me to surrender. And the figure, I know it's still out there, standing, waiting. The seventh night broke me. The hum didn't wait until dark this time. It began at sunset, threading through the air like a low chant, growing so constant that I couldn't tell if it was inside my bones or outside the cabin walls. The seismograph needle carved black gouges in the paper roll, spilling ink. Every object in the cabin rattled in place, the stovepipe, my enamel cup, the lantern swinging from its hook, and beneath all of it, I heard my name again. Clearer now, spoken in rhythm. Elias, Elias, Elias. I pressed my palms to my ears until they throbbed, but the sound traveled through the marrow. I tried shouting over it, tried drowning it with curses and prayers, but every word seemed absorbed, answered. The ice outside groaned as though something titanic shifted beneath it. Then came the second sound, knocks. Not on the door this time, from beneath the floorboards. Slow, heavy, right under my feet. I bolted upright, my cot clattering against the wall. The boards shuddered with each knock, powdered ice sifting through the cracks. My breath came fast, my hands trembling too violently to grab anything. The smell hit next, wet earth, metallic and rancid, like blood thawing from old stone. The chair bracing the door tipped over. I lunged forward, shoved it back into place, but the wind outside howled with sudden violence. The cabin walls flexed and popped like ribs under strain. I realized with cold terror that if it wanted me, no plank of wood could keep it out. So I grabbed the only thing that mattered, my flashlight, and ran. The door crashed open, wind slamming into me with blades of frost. My boots punched into snow as I sprinted, lungs searing with every inhale. The aurora smeared across the sky in green fire, casting the world in ghost light. Behind me, the cabin groaned once, then fell silent. But the hum followed. It rolled through the ice like a tide, matching my steps, chasing me north toward the fissure. My legs moved without thought, driven by some mingling of fear and compulsion. The footprints were everywhere now, circling, overlapping, leading the way. Dozens, hundreds, pressed into the snow. Some small, some massive, all bare. By the time I realized where my path led, I was already there. The fissure yawned wider than I remembered, its edges steaming. The snow had melted back several feet, exposing raw black ice that seemed to pulse with its own dim light. Spirals carved into the surface glistened with frost, the grooves impossibly deep, as though a giant hand had inscribed them. The hum grew deafening, flooding me until my knees buckled. I collapsed at the edge, hands braced against warm ice. My flashlight beam trembled across the void, swallowed almost instantly by the dark. And then I saw them. Faces. Dozens of them, shifting beneath the ice. Human faces, their features blurred by frost, their mouths opening and closing in silent rhythm with the vibration. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, fixed on me. I scrambled back, but the ice beneath my palms pulsed, alive, hot, like muscle flexing under skin. The whispers rose again, threading through the hum, layered voices overlapping in a chorus. Come down. Join us. Something moved in the fissure. Not a shadow, not a trick of light. A hand. Pale, long-fingered, pressing against the wall of ice from below. Another followed, then another, all clawing upward, distorting the surface. The ground shuddered, cracks snaking outward like veins. I turned to run, but they were there. Figures, standing at the tree line, just visible in the aurora glow. Dozens of them, motionless, pale shapes barely human, their bare feet pressed into the snow. Their faces were blurred, their bodies thin, but their heads turned in perfect unison to watch me. I staggered back toward the fissure, trapped between the watchers and the thing rising from below. My heart hammered, my breath ragged in the freezing air. The hum spiked, rattling my teeth, driving pain through my skull. And then Silence. So sudden it knocked me dizzy. The hum, the wind, the shifting ice, all gone. I stood at the edge of the fissure, trembling, flashlight beam jerking across black ice. The figures at the tree line did not move, and in that silence, a single word bloomed in my chest, not heard, but known. Stay. I collapsed backward into the snow, choking on my own breath. I don't know how long I lay there, staring up at the swirling green sky. By the time I dragged myself back to the cabin, the figures were gone. The fissure was still, but I know it's not over. The footprints still circle my cabin. The hum still lurks at the edge of perception, waiting for me to listen again. And sometimes, God help me, I want to. I didn't sleep after that night. I couldn't. Every time my eyelids sagged shut, I saw those faces under the ice, their mouths opening in rhythm, their pale hands pressing upward like drowned men clawing toward light. My own breath would catch, my body lurching awake before I slid into whatever dream waited for me down there. The cabin feels smaller now. Not shelter, just a box, one fragile layer of wood between me and what waits outside. My rations sit untouched on the table. Hunger gnaws at me, but the thought of swallowing anything makes my stomach twist. All I want is water, though even that tastes faintly of rust and ash. I ration sips, but when I look into the canteen, it seems darker than it should, as though something has seeped in. The hum hasn't stopped. It never really stops anymore. During the day, it lingers low, like a phantom heartbeat. At night, it swells until the walls shake, and sometimes I think it's syncing with my pulse, adjusting itself to match. Yesterday, I found myself humming back, not consciously. I was scratching notes in my journal, and when I looked down, I realized my lips were moving, my throat vibrating at the same rhythm I swore I'd never answer. I bit my tongue until blood filled my mouth. The taste grounded me for a moment. But the taste has faded, and the pull hasn't. This evening, I tried to start the backup generator to charge the radio. The handle slipped from my grip, slick with sweat, though the air burned my skin with cold. The generator wouldn't catch, no matter how many times I yanked the cord. And then I felt it, heat rising from the ground beneath me. Not mechanical heat, not fire, but the same warmth I felt when I touched the fissure, a slow exhale pushing through permafrost. I dropped the cord and stumbled back. The earth beneath the cabin throbbed once like a giant's heartbeat. The lights of the aurora flickered above the roof. I swear they bent downward, reaching for me. I sat on the floor for hours after that, knees pulled to my chest, flashlight clutched so tight my hand cramped. I listened. That's all I did. The hum rose and fell, carrying with it those layered whispers. Words I almost understand now. Not English, not any language I've studied, but meaning seeps through anyway, seeding itself in thought, promises of release, of warmth, of never being alone again. I wrote one sentence over and over in my notebook until the paper tore beneath the pen. Stone remembers. Stone keeps. I don't even know why. Can you know why? It's night again. The wind has died completely, which makes the silence unbearable. I hear things too clearly now. The scrape of snow shifting outside, the crackle of frost-splitting wood, and beneath it, breathing. Not mine. Not close. Just steady, patient, as though the ground itself is drawing air in and out. I tried barricading the cabin again, stacking equipment against the door and windows. But when I turned, I saw footprints inside. Small, wet, leading from the cot to the door. My own? I don't know anymore. The seismograph has gone wild, the ink spilling across the roll in frantic spirals, not lines, spirals. Perfect, endless, widening spirals. I tore the sheet free, crumpled it, and shoved it into the stove, but even the flames seemed to twist into the same shape. I'm breaking, I know it. But knowing doesn't stop it. I tried praying tonight. My mother would laugh at the idea of me finally folding my hands in a rotting shack in the middle of nowhere. But the words dissolved in my throat, replaced by that rhythm. The hum pressed harder until my prayer wasn't mine anymore, until it bent into that same beat pulsing through the ground. And then the knock came again. Not on the door this time, not under the floor, from inside the cabin. 3 slow raps on the wall directly behind me. The wood bowed inward, dust drifting down. My flashlight beam trembled across it, catching nothing, only the grain of old pine trembling as though something pressed its face against the other side. I didn't move. My lungs forgot how to draw air. The knock came again, closer to my ear this time, as though the wall itself had shifted forward. Then silence. But I know better now. Silence here isn't mercy. Silence is waiting. I don't think I can hold out much longer. My body is weak, my mind weaker still, and every time I close my eyes, I see the fissure. I feel its warmth. I hear them chanting in stone voices, promising me that all I have to do is let go, lean forward, and fall. Maybe tomorrow I will. I don't remember deciding to leave the cabin. My body must have made the choice for me. One moment I was slumped against the wall, half asleep, with the flashlight burned out in my hand. The next, I was standing in the doorway, boots already laced, parka pulled tight, the latch hanging open behind me. The cold should have knocked the air from my lungs, but I barely felt it. The air was warm, unnaturally so, the snow steaming in faint curls that glowed green beneath the aurora. The hum was everywhere now. Not beneath me, not around me, inside me. It threaded through muscle and bone like veins, each pulse bending my steps northward. My flashlight beam swayed across the snow, catching the spirals etched so deeply into the crust that they seemed to glimmer with their own faint light. The fissure loomed ahead, larger than it had been before, as if the ground itself had split wider overnight. The edges bled mist into the sky, curling in tendrils that carried the smell of rust and wet earth. I stopped at the rim, staring down into the black. The warmth rolling upward was stronger than ever, like standing above a furnace that beat with a heart. And then I saw them again. The faces under the ice. Dozens, maybe hundreds, shifting in the translucent wall. Their mouths opened in unison, releasing no sound, but I felt it. Words that slid under my skin, coiling into thought. We are waiting. Come down. Stone remembers. Stone keeps. The hum spiked, rattling my teeth. My knees buckled, and I dropped onto them at the edge, palms braced against the slick surface. The warmth bled through my gloves, searing, and the spirals glistened with a strange light, as though they were carved not into ice but into living tissue. Something stirred below. The blackness shifted, bulging upward, and a shape pressed against the fissure's skin. A face. No, not quite a face. Too long, too blurred, its eyes wide and glassy, its mouth stretched into something between a scream and a smile. A pale hand followed, fingers so thin they looked like cracks in the ice. It clawed upward, distorting the fissure wall as though the barrier between us was thinning. Behind me I heard footsteps. I whipped around, beam jerking across the snow. Figures stood at the tree line again, but closer now. Their forms clearer, human, yet not. Faces blurred, torsos gaunt, feet bare against the frost. They didn't move as the light struck them, but their heads all tilted in perfect unison, like stalks bending toward the sun. I stumbled back against the fissure, my heel slipping on the ice. The vibration surged through me, and in that moment, a single word pulsed so strongly it drowned every other thought. Down! The fissure groaned. The ground cracked outward. Steam hissed, coating my face with damp heat. My chest constricted, torn between terror and an unbearable urge to obey. The pull was physical now, like invisible hands pressing against my back, urging me to lean forward. I clutched my flashlight like a weapon, though against what, I didn't know. The figures at the tree line began to move, slowly at first, then faster. Dozens of them, bare feet pressing into snow without leaving sound. Their heads remained tilted, their blurred faces locked on me. The hum climbed, higher and higher, a resonance so sharp it made my vision blur. I screamed against it, a raw sound ripped from my throat. I'm not yours. For the briefest second, silence. Then the fissure answered. A roar, deeper than anything I've ever heard, tore upward from the ice. The ground shook violently, throwing me onto my side. My flashlight rolled, beam skittering across the fissure's black mouth. Something vast moved beneath it, then straining against the barrier. Cracks splintered outward, shards of ice snapping and plunging into the void. I crawled back, scrambling to my feet, lungs burning. The figures were closer now, too close. Their bodies flickered in and out of focus, like they weren't fully here, but their intent was clear. They were driving me, hurting me. The fissure yawned wider with each pulse, steam rising in choking clouds. Through the blur, I saw more hands pressing upward. Dozens of them had fingers scraping against translucent walls, some human, some not. The vibration spiked one final time, and in its thunder, I heard my name again. Elias. 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 1,000 voices overlapping, pulling me down. I staggered backward, teetering at the rim. My arms pinwheeled, balance faltering. Heat blasted up from the void, carrying with it the scent of stone blood and something far older. The spirals beneath my feet glowed red. For a heartbeat, I thought I was falling. But I caught myself. Somehow, against everything clawing at me, I staggered back from the edge. My scream echoed across the glacier, ragged and defiant, carried into the aurora-lit night. The hum didn't stop, but for the first time it faltered. The figures at the tree line froze, heads snapping upright. The fissure groaned, the cracks halting their spread. Silence dropped, heavy and sudden. I stood there, chest heaving, snow steaming around me, the flashlight beam quivering across the broken ground. The silence wasn't victory. It was pause, a predator waiting, and I know this isn't over. Because even now, as I stumble back toward the cabin, every step heavier than the last, I can feel the warmth still pulsing beneath the earth. I can hear whispers stitched into the silence. Stone remembers. Stone keeps. And I know, God help me, I will be back at the fissure again. I don't know how long I lay on the cot after stumbling back into the cabin. The lantern burned low, spitting little bursts of smoke, and every board in the walls groaned as though the whole structure was slowly being pulled apart. My body trembled uncontrollably, but it wasn't from the cold. The heat coming through the floorboards was unbearable now, like sleeping above a furnace. I pressed my ear against the wood once, against my better judgment. There was no hum, no vibration, just a sound I cannot forget, breathing. Wet, slow inhalations, exhalations so deep I felt them stir my hair. Like something vast lay just below, lungs spanning the glacier, drawing the world in and out. I threw myself back against the cot, shaking. Sleep wasn't possible, but exhaustion has its own gravity. My eyes closed against my will, and I dreamed. The fissure loomed before me in the dream, glowing red with spirals that pulsed like veins. But when I peered down, I didn't see darkness. I saw a vast cathedral of stone, walls carved with endless spirals, each groove filled with human figures pressed flat, their faces stretched in silent screams. At the center of the cathedral was a throne carved from ice, and upon it sat a shape I cannot describe without my mind bending. It wasn't man, wasn't beast. It was the absence of both, a presence wrapped in stone and heat, and it spoke with no mouth, filling my chest with words that weren't sound. All things return. Stone remembers. Stone keeps. I woke choking, sweat freezing instantly against my skin. My notebook was open on my chest. I hadn't left it there. Words covered the pages in handwriting that looked like mine, but jagged, alien. Spirals drawn again and again until the pen tore through paper. And one sentence written in lines too straight, too deliberate. You are already below. The lantern guttered out. Darkness smothered the cabin. I fumbled for my flashlight, hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. The beam flared weakly, bouncing across the walls, and there they were. Footprints, dozens of them. Not outside this time. Inside. Pressed into the frost-covered floorboards, circling my cot, leading to the door and back again, some small as a child's, some so wide they could never belong to anything human. The air pressed down on me, thick, suffocating. Then came the knock. Not sharp this time, not 3 raps, a dragging sound like nails or claws scraping slowly along the underside of the floor, tracing a spiral. The vibration followed, humming through the boards, climbing my spine. I couldn't stay. Not another second. I grabbed my pack, stuffed the flashlight and notebook inside, and bolted into the night. The air outside was worse. The aurora burned the sky in waves of red and green, too bright, too alive. The snow steamed, spirals etched across its surface, all pointing north toward the fissure. And the figures were waiting. Not at the tree line this time. They stood scattered across the clearing, dozens of them, motionless. Their bodies flickered in and out like bad reception, their faces blurred beyond recognition. Yet when my light hit them, every head turned in unison, locking on me. My breath stuttered. My legs wanted to buckle, but fear drove them forward. I stumbled, slipped, pushed myself upright again. The fissure glowed ahead, wider, bleeding mist that shimmered under the aurora. The hum surged, not from the ground this time, but from the figures. Their chests rose and fell together, exhaling sound that wasn't sound, weaving into the same rhythm. Elias, Elias, down, down. I screamed at them. Words, curses, anything to drown them out, but my voice faltered, breaking apart, and the hum only grew louder. My flashlight flickered, beam narrowing, then cutting out entirely. I slapped it, shook it, desperate. When it flared back on, the figures had moved closer, too close. Their blurred faces hovered feet from mine. I stumbled backward, boots scraping against warm snow. The fissure yawned behind me, glowing red, breathing heat against my back. Trapped. The hum crescendoed, so sharp my skull felt like it was splitting. My thoughts fractured, drowned in rhythm. My name repeated in thunder. And beneath it, that voice again, filling me, commanding. Fall, fall, fall. The ground cracked. A chunk of ice collapsed into the fissure, swallowed by black heat. Steam rose, curling around me like hands. The figures advanced, their movements jerky, wrong, faces flickering in and out. I dropped to my knees at the rim, hands clawing into snow that felt like flesh. My body swayed forward, every fiber pulled toward the glow. My arms trembled, muscles screaming as I fought the urge to let go. My lungs burned. My eyes watered, and then, above the roar, above the hum, I heard something else. The chop of helicopter blades. Distant, faint, but real. I lifted my head, blinking against the steam. A speck of light hovered far across the horizon, growing, cutting through the aurora like a star on fire. The hum faltered, just slightly, but enough. I shoved backward, crawling away from the fissure, gasping like a drowning man breaking the surface. The figures froze, heads snapping toward the sound. Their blurred forms flickered violently, as though struggling to remain. I staggered to my feet, screaming into the night, waving my arms toward the approaching light. My throat ripped raw. My body felt half dead. But I screamed anyway. The fissure roared, splitting wider, steam billowing upward in a wall of heat. The ground shuddered beneath me, spirals tearing into the snow like open wounds. The figures turned back to me, silent, patient, as though they knew the helicopter couldn't save me. And maybe they're right, because even now as I run toward that distant light, lungs burning, the hum hasn't left. It's quieter, buried, but still there, inside me, waiting. The helicopter's light swayed like a star, dragged low across the horizon, growing brighter with each thud of its blades. My heart surged with desperate hope, the kind that tastes like blood and fire in the back of the throat. I stumbled toward it, legs shaking, boots sinking into steaming snow that hissed beneath my weight. The fissure screamed behind me. There's no other word for it. A scream, tearing up from the ice, a sound so vast it seemed to split the sky. The aurora overhead rippled violently, colors bleeding into one another until the heavens burned crimson. My ears rang, my vision blurred. The ground heaved like the back of something stirring in its sleep. I pitched forward onto my hands, snow scorching my palms, and looked back just once. The fissure wasn't a crack anymore. It was a mouth. A wound ripped wide into the glacier, glowing red and black, steam curling upward like breath. Hands clawed at the edges, pale, endless hands, some human, some twisted beyond recognition. Faces pressed against the ice, shifting, stretching, mouths moving in unison. Elias. The figures in the clearing moved then, faster than before, no longer flickering but solid. They came in silence, bare feet slapping against steaming snow, arms reaching, heads cocked at unnatural angles. Dozens of them encircling me. I ran. Every step was agony, but the light ahead grew larger, the chop of blades louder. Snow whipped against my face from the rotor wash as the helicopter dipped low, its searchlight cutting jagged shadows across the clearing. I waved my arms, screamed until my voice shredded into nothing. The figures didn't slow. They charged now, their blurred faces stretched into masks of hunger. The fissure roared, steam blasting into the sky, carrying whispers that seared into my mind. Stone keeps. All things return. The helicopter hovered above, skids lowering, the pilot's shape barely visible through the glare. A rope ladder unrolled, swinging wildly in the downdraft. I leapt for it. My frozen fingers closed around the rope, burning as fibers bit into my skin. My boots slipped against the snow, but I hauled myself upward with strength I didn't know I had. The figures surged below, clawing at my legs, but the rotor wash battered them back. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd made it. Then the hum returned. Not from the ground. Not from the fissure. From inside me. It pulsed in my chest, in my skull, stronger than ever. My grip faltered, my vision darkened at the edges. Every muscle screamed to let go, to fall, to return to the spirals waiting below. The pilot's face appeared above, shouting something I couldn't hear over the roar. He reached down, arm extended. I forced my hand upward, trembling, stretching, fingertips brushing his glove. And that's when I saw it. Below me, in the spiraling snow, one figure stood perfectly still, taller than the rest, clearer. Its face wasn't blurred, it was mine. My own eyes staring up at me, my own cracked lips mouthing words I didn't need to hear. You never left. The rope swung violently. My legs buckled. My doppelganger tilted its head, smiling faintly, and the hum inside me spiked like a blade. For a moment, I almost let go, but something, rage, fear, stubbornness, I don't know, exploded in me. With a scream that tore blood from my throat, I lunged upward, grasping the pilot's arm. He hauled me onto the skid, shoving me inside the cabin as the ladder swung loose. The helicopter rose, rotors howling, pulling me away from the clearing. Below, the fissure collapsed inward with a roar, steam belching into the sky. The figures stood motionless once more, staring up as though nothing had changed. The spiral marks in the snow glowed faintly, even as distance swallowed them. I lay on the floor of the helicopter, chest heaving, tears freezing on my face. The pilot shouted over the noise, but I couldn't understand him. My ears rang with only one sound, the hum. Still there, faint but steady. Inside me. I pressed my palms to my ears, squeezed my eyes shut, but it didn't matter. The vibration pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, whispering promises in a voice made of stone and silence. Stone remembers. Stone keeps. You will come down again. And I believe it. The helicopter carried me away from the Wrangell Mountains, but I knew before the first hour passed that I hadn't truly escaped. The pilot tried speaking to me several times during the flight. I remember his eyes flicking toward me in the dim cockpit light, concern etched deep into his weathered face. He shouted questions I couldn't answer. Was I injured? What happened to the cabin? Why the emergency extraction? I could only sit slumped in the harness, staring out the side window at the glaciers rolling beneath us. Even from above, I swore I could see them. Spirals carved into the ice, faint but vast, curling outward across the snowfields in patterns too precise to be natural. Like crop circles etched by something ancient beneath the surface, each line glowing faintly in the aurora's shimmer. The pilot said nothing. Maybe he couldn't see them. Maybe I was already too far gone. When we landed at the tiny outpost strip, I stumbled out into the night, knees threatening to buckle. My legs felt like they'd carried me for weeks. I was escorted inside, given hot coffee I barely tasted, asked questions I barely heard. My answers were automatic. Equipment failure, frostbite, exhaustion. They nodded, scribbling notes, and left me in a cot near a space heater. That night in the outpost bunk, I closed my eyes and heard it again. The hum. Not faint anymore. Not distant. Louder than ever, threaded perfectly into my heartbeat, so seamless that it felt like I'd carried it with me all along. In my chest, in my ribs, in the hollow places where silence used to live. I dreamed again. Not of the fissure this time, not of the figures in the clearing. I dreamed of stone. Endless stone. Layers pressed through time, each one filled with bodies flattened like fossils, their faces open in silent screams. I walked through the layers down and down until I saw myself embedded there too, eyes wide, lips moving with the hum. I woke with my fists clenched and blood in my mouth from biting down too hard. My notebook was in my lap, though I hadn't placed it there, pages filled with spirals scrawled in my hand, and one phrase repeated over and over until the pen tore the paper. Stone remembers. Stone keeps. I burned the pages in the space heater. The smoke smelled of iron and rot. It's been weeks since then. I was flown back to Anchorage, then south, then home. Colleagues ask about the survey, about the data. I smile too easily and tell them the readings were inconclusive. The trip cut short by weather. They nod and move on. But the hum never left. It's with me now, steady, patient, threading through every silence. When I walk down city streets, I hear it in the pavement beneath my feet. When I try to sleep, it rises until I feel my mattress pulse with each vibration. And sometimes, God help me, when people speak to me, I hear the rhythm in their voices too, as though their words are just another form of the same message. I haven't been back to the mountains. I tell myself I never will. But each night, the pull grows stronger. The fissure waits, and I feel it waiting through me. I know one day I'll return, not by choice, but by inevitability. Because stone remembers, stone keeps, and I was never meant to leave. My name is Captain Elias Varga, and I have walked battlefields that smelled of burnt steel and blood. I thought I had seen the worst the world could throw at a man. But war trains you for enemies you can name, weapons you can anticipate, strategies you can counter. Out here, in the white wasteland of the Alaskan Arctic, there is no enemy you can predict, only the cold, the silence, and whatever it is that waits in that silence. I was brought here as security for a team of 6 geologists studying permafrost shifts and methane pockets, a standard contract, the sort of work I'd been taking since leaving the Hungarian Special Forces. Watch the perimeter, keep an eye on wildlife, make sure no one froze to death because they strayed too far from camp. Simple work. Safer than guarding oil pipelines in Nigeria or escorting convoys through Helmand. At least that's what I thought. The valley itself feels unnatural. Even before things started to go wrong, I could sense it. The cliffs rise so steep they blot out the weak Arctic sun. Sound doesn't travel right here. It bounces, twists, echoes where no walls exist. The air smells metallic, sharp in the throat like the inside of a gun barrel. At night, the aurora ripples faintly, but always behind cloud cover, as if the sky itself doesn't want to be seen. The first unusual detail came on our second night. The dogs wouldn't stop barking at the ice ridge beyond the research tents. Huskies, hardened animals, used to the north, stood hackled and wide-eyed, pulling at their chains until their paws bled. When I went to check, there was nothing. No bear, no movement, just the faint hiss of wind through frozen stone. But the sound the wind carried wasn't right. It was broken, like breathing, like something trying to match the rhythm of my own lungs. By the 4th night, one of the scientists was missing. Dr. Yates, a man I had spoken with hours earlier, laughing over how Americans never trusted a foreign soldier until they saw him fix a generator with his bare hands. His tent flap was torn open, no blood, no tracks, just gone. The others swore he must have wandered off, maybe drunk, maybe disoriented. But I know the discipline of tents, of zippers, of soldiers and civilians alike. The tear wasn't outward. It was inward, as if something had reached in. I stayed behind when the others left. They panicked, called in their evacuation chopper, swore they'd report back to the funding board. I didn't trust that machine in the sky any more than I trusted what was crawling beneath this ice. So I volunteered to pack what I could, stay another day, make sure no one else came looking and found nothing but shredded canvas and clawed snow. That was 12 hours ago. The helicopter is long gone, and now the silence presses closer. The camp sits at the base of the valley wall, a cluster of half-collapsed tents around a sputtering generator. The snow muffles everything, my own boots, the rattle of my rifle sling, even my breath behind the balaclava. Only the occasional creak of ice reminds me the land itself is alive, restless. I force myself into routine. Soldiers live by it. Check weapons, HK-416 rifle, sidearm, 2 magazines, combat knife. Check supplies, 6 ration packs, 3 liters of meltwater, flare gun compass. Check perimeter. Walk the frozen edge of camp, listen, smell, feel. Always feel, and I do feel something. The air is warmer tonight, unnaturally so. A wetness rides the wind. The snowpack under my boots sags, not crunches. Somewhere beneath, something is shifting. I crouch, glove pressed into the ice, and I swear I feel it vibrate. Not like a quake, not like geology, like movement, like something alive, stretching, turning. A sound follows, not loud, just enough. A scrape, like claws on stone, carried up from beneath my feet. My training says stay calm. Panic kills faster than bullets. But my body betrays me. Pulse racing, breath fogging too quick, vision tunneling into the dark ridge beyond the camp. That's when I see it. A figure. Far out on the ridge, standing too still. Human in shape. Dr. Yates? For a moment, my throat tightens. Hope, confusion, disbelief. I raise my flashlight, beam cutting through frozen mist. The ridge is empty. But the dogs, God, the dogs are howling again, teeth bared toward that same ridge. One of them strains so hard the chain snaps, and it bolts into the whiteness. I shout, run after it, snow dragging at my legs. My light bounces off ice and shadow. I hear the dog yelp, high and sharp, then silence. Not even an echo. I stop running. My instincts scream, trap. The beam of my flashlight catches tracks in the snow ahead. Not paw prints, not boots. Something in between. Elongated, heavy at the heel but splitting at the front as if whatever walked there carried claws it chose to half hide. The pattern is wrong, the stride too long for a man. I back away, slow, weapon raised. My training says never chase what you don't understand into terrain you can't control. My chest tightens with the same sensation I felt years ago in Afghanistan when an alley went quiet before an ambush. The world narrows, every nerve straining for movement. Behind me, the generator sputters, falters, and dies. The camp plunges into darkness. The generator's last cough fades, leaving only the low moan of wind sliding along the cliffs. In the darkness, every sound sharpens. My ears strain for footsteps, for breath that isn't mine. The snow reflects what little starlight pierces the clouds, but it's a ghostly glow, more illusion than vision. I steady my breathing, count to 5, inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. A soldier's rhythm. My hands move without thought, switch rifle safety off, press stock tight against shoulder, adjust stance. Then it comes. Not a scream, not a howl, something worse. The sound begins as a man's voice calling faintly, "Help, Elias." The words are broken by the wind, thin and stretched like a recording dragged across damaged tape. My blood chills. It's Dr. Yates's voice. The same tone I heard when he asked me to pass him a wrench days ago. But Yates is gone. I know he is. The voice shifts, higher now, a woman's cry, desperate, "Over here!" It sounds like Dr. Han, the youngest of the scientists, except she's gone too. I watched her climb onto that helicopter, pale and shaking. I realize what it's doing. It's copying them. It's trying to draw me out. I retreat slowly toward the tents, but my boots crunch too loud in the hush. I glance down. The prints I leave are clear, but beside them, another track. Fresh, parallel to mine. The rifle jerks upward before my mind even registers it. My light slices across the snow. Empty. Only the valley's long white expanse staring back at me. But I know it's close. Inside the supply tent, I flick on a red-lensed headlamp. My breath smokes in the still air as I push the flap shut and drag a crate against it. The thin canvas walls feel like paper armor, but it's better than nothing. I sit, rifle across my lap, forcing myself to think. What do I know? Something moves under the ice. It can climb to the surface. It leaves distorted tracks, part man, part animal. It mimics voices it wanted me to follow. My training tells me one thing clearly. It's intelligent. Not just an animal hunting on instinct. It's strategic. I rub my hands together for warmth, fingers stiff inside gloves. The red light flickers on the steel of my knife, the black of my rifle. My old commander used to say, "Fear is a tool, Elias. Sharpen it. Don't let it dull you." I repeat it silently. It doesn't help. The sound comes again, closer. Not a voice this time. A scratching, a slow drag of something sharp along metal. My head turns. The supply tent frame groans. The noise slides down the aluminum pole like claws teasing prey. I raise the rifle, sight trained on the fabric wall. The scratching stops. Silence. Then, pressure. The tent bows inward, a bulge forming inches from my face like a hand pressing from outside. 5 points dig against the fabric, spreading, testing. I don't breathe. I don't move. The claws trace down, then vanish. I snap the flap open and thrust my light out, finger tense on the trigger. Nothing. Only the white, endless snow and the faint shimmer of aurora above. But then, movement, far at the edge of the beam. A figure. Human-shaped again. Too still, too tall. Shoulders wrong. It watches me, and then it sinks. Straight down, as if the snow swallowed it whole. The hours stretch. I don't sleep. I can't. Every creak of ice outside feels like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounds like whispers. I heat snow for water, sip it, force myself to eat a ration bar, though my stomach twists. My thoughts loop. If the scientists didn't just run, if Yates didn't just vanish, did it take them beneath? Is that why there was no blood, no tracks? Did it drag them under the ice? I think of the dog, its yelp cut off like a switch. My hands tremble, not from cold, but from the thought of suffocation under black ice, lungs filling with freezing water while something pulls you deeper. I shake it off. Soldiers don't imagine. Soldiers act. By dawn, or what passes for dawn here, the storm clears. A dim gray light leaks into the valley. I step outside, rifle ready, every muscle taut. The snow is shifted, not drifted, not blown. Shifted. Entire sections of the ground have sunk slightly, like something moving beneath a blanket. Lines crisscross the valley floor, depressions too wide to be cracks, too irregular to be normal. And at the center of camp, not 20 meters away, a new hole has opened. Wide. Black. Steam curling from its rim. I approach slow, knees bent, rifle aimed. The heat rising stinks of rot, metallic and foul, like meat gone bad inside a furnace. My stomach lurches. I peer inside. The hole drops into darkness, jagged ice forming a rough tunnel downward. And there, half frozen in the wall, I see something. A boot. Human. Attached to a leg. Dr. Yates, the skin around his ankle is torn, shredded, as if something dragged him down and the ice sealed back over him. His face is twisted, mouth open in a scream I can't hear. Frost has coated his eyes, white and glassy. I stumble back, bile burning my throat. The ice shifts, cracks splinter. Something moves deeper in the tunnel. Heavy, rising. I turn and run. Back in the supply tent, I slam the flap down, drag crates over it. My breath comes ragged, my heart jackhammering. For the first time in years, since bullets tore through a wall inches from my head in Syria, I feel true panic clawing at me. It knows I saw. It knows I understand now. The ground beneath the tent rumbles. I press my rifle to my shoulder, every nerve screaming. The floor sags slightly, canvas trembling like something testing from below. Then silence, long silence, and then a voice. Not outside, not distant, inside the tent. Elias. Dr. Yates' voice again, but the sound doesn't come from the flap. It comes from beneath the floor. The snow under my boots vibrates. I freeze, every muscle locked. Then, slowly, a shape rises beneath the canvas, pushing up from the ground. Not human, not fully. The outline is wrong. Too many angles, limbs bending where no joint should be. A head tilts, pressing against the fabric, stretching it thin until I can almost make out features. Not Yates. Something wearing his face like a mask. I pull the trigger. The rifle roars in the small space. Muzzle flash blinding, the recoil a familiar kick against my shoulder. Bullets rip through canvas, shredding the shape. Snow bursts inward, the tent collapsing, air filled with ice shards and smoke. When the echo fades, I'm lying half buried, ears ringing. The shape is gone. But the hole beneath the tent yawns wider, a tunnel of black ice descending deep into the earth. I crawl back, gasping. The dogs howl again from where they're chained at the edge of camp, voices wild, desperate. One by one, they fall silent. Not a whimper, just silence. The snow around me shifts, circles forming, not random, deliberate, as if it's closing in. I realize something then. It's not hunting me because it's hungry. It's hunting me because I'm still here, and maybe, deep beneath this valley, it's been waiting a long, long time for someone not to run. Snow seeps into my clothes as I dig myself free from the collapsed tent. My ears are still ringing from the rifle burst, but the valley is silent again. Too silent. No dogs. No wind. Only the faint creak of shifting ice. I force myself upright, rifle clutched against my chest, breath ragged through my balaclava. The black tunnel beneath the camp is still yawning open, edges jagged and steaming. My boots crunch as I back away, every instinct screaming to put distance between me and that hole. But distance means nothing here. It can move under the ice. It can surface wherever it wants. I stop moving, steady my thoughts. A soldier doesn't win by running blind. A soldier studies, calculates. What does it want? Not just food. If it were only hunger, it would have taken me already, like the scientists. No, it mimics voices. It lures. It tests. That means curiosity, intelligence. I'm not prey. I'm an opponent. That thought steadies me more than anything else. If it sees me as a threat, then maybe I can act like one. I inventory my gear again. Rifle, 21 rounds left. Sidearm, 15. Knife, flares, small amount of fuel. Explosives, none. My mind keeps circling back to that. Soldiers are trained to use terrain to shape the battlefield, but I have nothing here, just snow, ice, and the cold, unless I use those. I gather supplies fast, hands shaking but precise, fuel canister, flare gun, nylon rope. My breath fogs thick in the freezing air as I drag everything into the last intact tent, the communications shelter. Inside, the emergency radio is dead, same as the generator, but it gives me walls, structure, a place to plan. I tie the rope around my waist, the other end to the steel frame. Then I set the flare gun by my knee, rifle across my lap. My idea is half crazy, but it's all I have. If it wants to drag me under, maybe I let it, but not unprepared, not without fire waiting in my hands. Hours drag. The valley never brightens, just hangs in that dim twilight between storm and night. I force myself to eat again, chewing dry rations that taste like cardboard. Every bite feels hollow, mechanical. I drink meltwater that burns my teeth with cold. My body obeys routine, but my mind drifts back to faces, my old unit, the men we lost in mountains and cities half a world away. I remember their eyes when the ambush came, the silence after. This place feels like that silence, the same emptiness. Except here, the enemy isn't flesh and blood. Here, the enemy comes through the ground itself. The sound starts low, a rumble beneath the tent. The rope at my waist tugs, slight at first, then stronger, like a current pulling a swimmer. The snow floor buckles, shifts. My breath spikes, every nerve screaming. It's here. The ground splits open with a wet crack, black ice giving way to a tunnel below. Cold steam billows up, reeking of rotten iron. And in that steam, something rises. A hand, or what looks like one. Too long, fingers splayed, claws curling like hooks. Skin? No, something stretched and pale, too smooth, almost translucent. Another hand follows, pulling, dragging something massive upward. The face comes last. Not Yates this time. Not any human I know, but it wears the idea of a face. Eye sockets too deep, mouth too wide, jaw unhinging in silence, and then it speaks. Elias. My name in my own voice. Perfect. The sound rattles my chest as if I'd spoken it myself. I squeeze the trigger. The rifle roars, bullets slamming into pale flesh. The thing jerks back, ice shattering around it, but the hole doesn't close. Instead, the ground heaves, the rope around my waist jerks hard, and I'm pulled toward the tunnel. I slam down, scrabbling for purchase, boots skidding across snow. My hands tear at the rope, trying to slow my drag. My body slams into the tunnel edge, pain spiking up my ribs. The stink of rot burns my nose, and below me, darkness. Vast. Moving. Shapes in the ice wall, human and not human, half frozen, mouths open in eternal screams. Some are ancient, some look recent. The thing is pulling me down to join them. I grab the flare gun, jam it against the rope, and fire. The blast sears, light exploding in the tunnel, fire licking up nylon. The rope snaps. I'm free, falling for an instant before I slam against the edge, scraping skin and cloth. The creature recoils, shrieking without sound, mouth open too wide. The flare burns bright as it tumbles into the black, lighting the tunnel like a furnace. For an instant I see it, not one shape. Many. Limbs folding into limbs, faces pressing outward, merging, splitting. A colony of stolen flesh and bone, trapped in one impossible body. Then the light dies, swallowed by the dark. I claw my way back, scrambling on hands and knees, chest heaving, lungs burning. The ground shifts, cracks spreading outward as if the whole valley is flexing. I stumble to my feet, stagger outside the tent. The snow isn't still anymore, it's moving. The entire valley floor ripples, sinking and rising like the surface of a vast frozen sea. And from beneath, dozens of holes open, steaming, gaping. The air fills with the sound of voices, dozens, hundreds, all calling at once. My name, others' names. Pleas for help, screams, laughter. The creature isn't one thing, it's the valley, the ice itself. I backpedal toward the cliff wall, rifle raised but useless. 20 rounds won't kill this. Nothing will. My breath comes in short gasps. My body wants to run, but where? There's no exit, no path. The only way out is up. The cliff face towers, jagged ice and stone. A soldier doesn't waste time questioning. I sling the rifle, grab my knife, and start climbing, fingers cutting into the rock, boots slip, knees slam, but I climb. Every muscle burns, lungs raw in the cold air. Below me, the valley stirs like a waking beast. Holes opening, closing, shifting. Shapes rising, then sinking. And always the voices, calling, coaxing, mocking. One voice cuts through them all. My mother's. Elias, come home. I freeze on the rock, knife wedged in a crack, breath shuddering. The voice is perfect, warm, kind. The same tone she used when I was a boy, standing in the doorway after drills, telling me to sit, eat, rest. I shut my eyes. For a moment I want to let go, to fall, to stop climbing. But then another memory comes, my unit, my commander's words. Fear is a tool. I force my eyes open, snarl, and drive the knife higher. The voice changes, twists, becomes a laugh. The cliff trembles beneath me. Cracks splinter upward, ice breaking loose. I haul myself higher, muscles screaming. The last of my strength surges as I grab the ridge, pull, and roll onto solid ground. The valley stretches below, shifting, boiling with holes and steam. The tents collapse one by one, swallowed. The generator, the equipment, everything, gone. Only the endless white sea of ice alive and waiting. I lie there, chest heaving, frost forming in my beard. My body shakes, not just from cold, but from the knowledge burning in my mind. I survived. But the valley isn't empty, and it never was. The ridge wind cuts through me like a blade, sharper than the cold I've known these past nights. My fingers ache, raw from the climb. My chest heaves against the weight of my vest. I lie flat against the icy ground, staring down into the valley. Below, the world shifts and heaves as if the land itself is alive. What once looked like solid ice now breathes. Huge sections rise, collapse, ripple outward in waves. Steam pours from fissures, curling into the sky like smoke from an unseen fire. And in that steam, shadows move. Elongated, twisting, human shapes pressed against translucent ice before melting back into it. The voices are louder now. Hundreds, thousands. They layer over each other in an endless chorus. Sobs, laughter, screams, whispers. Some call my name. Some speak in languages I don't know. Some are only guttural noises, sounds not meant for a human throat. I clutch the rifle across my chest, though I know it's nothing but comfort now. Ammunition means nothing against something that can reshape the earth itself. Still, I survived the valley floor. I survived its tunnels. And soldiers survive by moving, by refusing to be still. I push myself to my knees, then to my feet, swaying on the cliff ridge. The snow is thinner here, swept by wind. I can see, faint in the distance, the broken line of the supply trail, half-buried markers the scientists used when they first arrived. If I follow it long enough, it leads toward the plateau where the evac helicopter had landed. But it's miles away, and the creature knows I'm here. The first sign is the silence. The voices cut off all at once, like a radio switch thrown. The valley below stills, ripples vanishing, steam sinking back into cracks. That silence terrifies me more than the noise. I begin moving, boots crunching on wind-blown ice. Each step feels exposed, too loud. My eyes scan constantly, ridgeline, sky, valley below. The landscape is empty, endless, but I know better. After 20 minutes, I see the first marker, an orange flag half buried in drift. My heart lifts, a line to follow, a path out. Then I notice the second marker, farther ahead. It isn't where it should be. The angle is wrong. The flag is planted in a direction leading back toward the valley, not away from it. I slow, staring. The wind snaps the fabric of the flag. For a moment, I wonder if I misremembered. But soldiers don't misremember terrain. I walked this line when I first arrived with the team. Those markers don't match. It moved them. The realization chills me deeper than the Arctic air. It knows I want out. It's shaping my escape route, turning me back into its jaws. I grit my teeth, force myself to breathe, to think. I ignore the false line, chart my own. Sun's too weak for direction. Compass needle twitches from magnetic stone. Still, I can feel the slope of land, the prevailing wind, the angle of ridges. A soldier doesn't trust signs. A soldier trusts instinct. I veer off the flags, cutting my own line through the snow. The ground trembles underfoot. At first, it's subtle, like distant thunder. Then stronger, waves rolling through the ice beneath me. Cracks leap outward, spiderwebbing across the ridge. My knees buckle, but I stay upright, forcing forward. The snow bursts open 10 meters ahead. Steam erupts, black and foul, and from it rises a shape. Not human, not animal. A tangle of limbs, faces pressed outward, mouths open in silent screams. It pulls itself halfway up before sinking back, like bait breaching the surface. I fire. The rifle barks, bullets sparking off ice, punching holes into flesh. The thing jerks, spasms, collapses back into the hole. Silence follows. Then a whisper at my ear. Closer. I whirl, weapon raised, but nothing stands behind me. Only wind. The hole where the thing sank closes over, smooth as untouched snow. I run. Boots pound against ice, breath tearing from my lungs. The ridge twists, narrows, widens. Every step feels like it could break open beneath me. My rifle bounces against my chest. My vision narrows into white and gray, broken only by the faint black smear of the plateau far ahead. Behind me, the voices rise again. Not scattered this time. United. A single word repeated in hundreds of tones. Elias. My name. Over and over. It's not hunting now. It's calling me home. I crest the last ridge, legs burning, lungs raw. Ahead lies the plateau, flat, wind-scoured, the same site where the chopper had lifted the others away. The landing beacons are still there, half-buried pylons tipped with dead lights. Beyond them, the endless horizon. For the first time in days, hope flickers. I stagger across the plateau, collapse beside one of the beacons. My body trembles with exhaustion, but I force myself to crawl to the emergency signal kit the scientists left behind. A steel box, rim iced over. My gloves scrape it open. Inside, flares. I load one into the launcher, hands shaking, aim skyward, and fire. The flare streaks red across the gray sky, trailing sparks, hissing as it burns. It arcs high, then bursts, glowing against cloud. A beacon for anyone within miles. I fire a second, then a third. The sky glows crimson. I wait, breath steaming, eyes fixed on the horizon, and then sound, distant. Low, the chop of rotor blades, my chest tightens with relief, so sharp it hurts. A helicopter. Real, coming closer. I stand, waving, shouting though they can't hear me over the wind. The black shape grows larger, cutting through cloud, tilting toward the plateau. I can see its markings, its lights. Rescue. I stumble forward, arms raised. That's when I notice the snow around my boots sinking, soft, like sand. The ground trembles. Cracks leap outward in jagged webs. Steam hisses upward. The plateau isn't solid. I look down and I see faces pressed against the ice. Dozens, hundreds, eyes staring up, mouths opening in soundless hunger. The entire plateau is thin ice over a vast chamber. The helicopter hovers closer, downdraft whipping snow. A rope ladder drops, swinging. Salvation hangs meters above me. But beneath my boots, the ice buckles, splinters, hands, too many, rise through the cracks. Pale, clawed, reaching. They grasp my legs, cold burning through fabric, pulling. I scream, wrench free, stumble toward the ladder. My hands catch rope. The helicopter bucks in wind, blades thundering. Below, the plateau collapses. Ice gives way in a roaring cascade, entire sections plunging into black. The thing rises, massive, endless, limbs and faces writhing in a single, impossible mass. It reaches upward, claws snapping inches from my boots as I climb. I scream at the pilot, "Go, go!" My voice raw, shredded. The helicopter surges higher. The valley falls away. Below, the creature doesn't chase, it only watches. Hundreds of faces turn upward in unison, and all of them are smiling. Hours later, I sit in the cabin, wrapped in a blanket, trembling with exhaustion. The crew asks questions, but I don't answer. My eyes are fixed on the frozen horizon slipping beneath us because I know the truth. That valley isn't dead. It isn't empty. It's alive, and it's waiting.